Chapter 14:10. As they walked out of the Union Pavilion, the glaring sunlight immediately shone on their faces, washing away the gloominess and unhappiness on their faces. The noise on the street rang out once again, causing Xiao Yan's state of mind to gradually calm down. Compared to meeting those two, he was more inclined towards the noisy outside world. "Are we going back home?" Bai Hua's gaze swept around as she softly said. Since they had obtained the sumaru grass, their goal had been achieved. Naturally, there was no need to continue staying here. In addition, although Bai Hua was not afraid of Zhao Mingjia's furious words, she was still somewhat worried. After all, as they knew, behind Zhao Mingjie stood a source venerate-level father. Once they met him, things would not end so easily. Hearing this, Xiao Yan muttered to himself for a moment. He also had some considerations in his heart. His gaze then turned towards Lian, who was curiously looking around. He paused for a moment, then smiled in relief and said, "Forget it. Since we are here, we should naturally take a look around. Since we have obtained the sumaru grass, there is no need to be so anxious. Today, we will accompany this girl and have some fun. Moreover, the auction house is worth taking a look. Perhaps we will be able to obtain some unexpected gains." Then the Zhao family. Counter-soldiers with arms, water with an earthware. Don't forget, regardless of whether it is the Zhao family or Shuyang City, they are all under the rule of the Xiao clan. Understanding Bai Hua's worries, Xiao Yan turned his head and gave her a comfortable smile. The expression on his face gradually relaxed. His gaze landed on Lian, looking at her still young and tender face. Xiao Yan could not help but reveal a doting expression on his face. He gently rubbed Lian's delicate little head with one hand, allowing her to pout and mutter with a depressed expression. Then, he raised his chin towards the towering black stone tower in front of them and said indifferently, "Let's go." After saying this, he took the lead and led the way. Lian naturally followed closely behind. Bai Hua turned her head to look at the Union Pavilion behind her and frowned slightly before following them. Without any hindrance, the two of them naturally allowed the little girl to run as she pleased for the rest of the journey. She was like a little pony that was galloping in all directions. The smile on her pretty face was even more enchanting. Xiao Yan felt an inexplicable envy in his heart as he watched the little girl's lively and happy manner. Although they were able to clearly see the appearance of the enormous black tower from a distance, there was still some distance before the three of them could reach it from their current position. Although the three of them were moving at a steady pace, Xiao Yan appeared to have underestimated Lian's character. Once a woman's nature was released, the shops along the street seemed to become 2 rows of delicious cakes in her eyes. Under Lian's crazy rampage, almost all the shops along the street had been broken into by her and plundered along the way. Even with Xiao Yan's financial resources, he could not help but feel a burst of pain. Looking at the storage ring handed over by the shop owner with a face full of smiles, as well as the spirit stones he had crazily poured out, Xiao Yan's expression could not help but become a little absent-minded. On the other hand, Bai Hua, who was beside him, could not help but look at him with a face full of ridicule. Sigh. With a bitter smile and a sigh, Xiao Yan could not help but look at Bai Hua for help. Only then did the latter smile in her heart and pulled Lian, who was about to rush out of the door, behind her obediently. Only then did Xiao Yan not dare to delay any longer and quickly rush towards the auction house in the center of the city. If he continued to allow this girl to continue like this, he was afraid that he would have to spend all his money here. The horses hurried without stopping for a while. A moment later, an auction house that surrounded the enormous black tower appeared in front of the three of them. The huge auction house was in the shape of a ring, with a stone pillar in the middle. Towering pitch-black walls stood tall, like an iron bastion, giving people a kind of inexplicable pressure. At this moment, many people were gathered outside the auction house in queues, waiting to enter the auction house in order. "Looks like we have to wait for a while." Xiao Yan involuntarily smacked his lips as he eyed the somewhat crowded human flow in front of him. His brows were knit together slightly. Based on the current queue outside the auction ground, it was likely that they would have to wait for another 2 hours before they could enter. With regards to this, Bai Hua naturally had an indifferent attitude. Her gaze was calm as she looked at the lively scene in front of her. With one hand, she tightly held onto Lian, who was looking around with the intention of leaving, and quietly waited. "This is Mr. Xiao Yan?" However, just as Xiao Yan was frowning, a somewhat suspicious voice suddenly sounded from the crowd. Immediately, The three of them looked towards the source of the voice. In the crowd, a group of people led by a middle-aged man also turned towards them. Turning his gaze, Xiao Yan's gaze immediately locked onto a middle-aged man in the group of people in front of him. Seeing the latter, Xiao Yan's mind only pondered for a moment before he immediately recognized the middle-aged man in front of him. Surprisingly, the middle-aged man in front of him was the head of the An clan, and Nan, who had once stopped him in Tianyang City. So it is the head of the An clan. It has been a few days since we last met. How have you been? After recovering from his shock, Xiao Yan immediately cupped his hands politely towards An Nan. Although he did not have a good impression of this person, he did not completely disregard him. Moreover, An Nan had been courteous to him first, so he naturally had to return the favor. Haha, Mr. Xiao Yan is too polite. A month ago, An Nan was blind and did not recognize Mr.'s identity. Recently, there has been some news about Mr. in the clan. Only then did I know that Mr. is also a member of the Xiao clan. In the face of Xiao Yan's attitude, An Nan did not dare to slight him. According to his knowledge, this seemingly ordinary black-robed young man in front of him had caused quite a commotion when he first entered the Xiao clan. After that, he was favored by the higher-ups of the Xiao clan. Now, he actually appeared in front of him again. This was an opportunity for the An clan. Seeing that their head of the An clan actually displayed such a respectful attitude towards an unfamiliar young man, the few An clan members behind An Nan could not help but cast a surprised gaze at Xiao Yan, who was wearing a black robe. They could not help but feel suspicious in their hearts. Who exactly was this young man that could make An Nan so respectful? An Nan, it is too early for you to say this. Before everything is settled, he is not a true member of the Xiao clan. At most, he is just an outsider with the same surname. Just as Xiao Yan and An Nan were chatting happily, a cold laughter that was filled with disdain suddenly sounded from the crowd at the side. As the voice sounded, the surrounding crowd quickly moved aside. Soon after, Xiao Yan once again saw the Xiao Tian duo, who he had forced back not long ago. However, the difference from before was that there was an additional middle-aged figure in a light yellow robe in front of the two of them. The laughter just now was emitted from his mouth. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the middle-aged man who was stepping forward step by step. Surprise flashed across his eyes. With his current spiritual strength, he was actually unable to see through the middle-aged man's strength. In this way, there was no need to guess the identity of this person. This middle-aged man must be the head of the Zhao clan in Liang City, Zhao Jin. Chapter 14:11. Following the appearance of the middle-aged man and Xiao Tian behind him, the noise in the area where the crowd was located immediately became much softer. Some of the stronger people had unnatural expressions. At this moment, Anan, who was standing in front of Xiao Yan, was slightly startled when he saw the middle-aged man. He could not help but become a little gloomy as he said in a serious voice, "Zhao Jin, you have indeed come." Although Anan had already expected Zhao Jin's appearance, he did not expect to meet him here. "Humph, even your An clan has received the news. How can I, Zhao Jin, not know? There are not many times that an E-class Do technique is auctioned in Shuyang City. In the past, my Zhao clan had obtained it 3 times. I wonder how confident clan Hedan is this time?" Zhao Jin coldly smiled. His words did not leave any face. Anan's expression involuntarily became a little ugly after these words were spoken. Even his face could not help but tremble slightly. Xiao Yan, who was by the side, also frowned slightly. The way this father and son of the Zhao clan acted was exactly the same. It was no wonder that they were disliked. At the same time, he also noticed the matter of the E-class Do technique in his heart. The Xiao clan had strict control over high-class Qi methods and Do techniques. These things would not easily be leaked out. It was unexpected that an E-class Do technique would be auctioned in this city. This caused Xiao Yan to be a little surprised. There is no need for clan head Zhao to worry. The outcome of the auction will naturally be revealed when the time comes. Anan clenched his teeth and spoke in a deep voice. "Humph humph. All right. However, clan Hedan better not disappoint me when the time comes. Otherwise, it will be very boring." Zhao Jin coldly smiled with disdain. He had long since stopped caring about the An clan. With his origin venerate cultivation, the current Zhao clan could be said to be changing rapidly. His Zhao clan was the strongest among the subordinates of the Xiao clan. Although the An clan controlled Tianyang City alone, they were merely struggling at death's door. As for you, Xiaoyan, I didn't want to pursue the matter of you injuring my son a month ago because you're a junior. However, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn and mischievous, committing the same crime again and again. A mere outsider dares to rebel against your superiors. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhao Mingjie and the other members of the Zhao family behind him immediately revealed expressions of disdain. Gazes filled with ridicule and disdain were also cast over. Resentment surged in Zhao Mingjie's eyes. On the other hand, Xiao Tian frowned slightly after hearing these words. He glanced at Zhao Jin and a glint flashed across his eyes. A chill rose in his heart. In recent years, as the Zhao clan grew stronger with the support of Xiao Jinghong and the others, the morale of the members of the Zhao clan also soared. Some ordinary members of the Xiao clan even looked down on them. Although the higher-ups of the Xiao clan were aware of this, they usually turned a blind eye to it. However, Zhao Jin's words had touched a taboo in Xiao Tian's heart. Firstly, Zhao Mingjie was injured because his skills were inferior and he is a piece of trash. Secondly, in the entire Xiao clan, the Zhao clan doesn't even have the qualifications to appear on the stage. How can you rebel against your superiors? Thirdly, it's not up to you to decide whether I am an outsider or not in the Xiao clan. Clan head Zhao thinks too highly of himself. Xiaoyan smiled faintly. His mocking words didn't contain the slightest trace of politeness. As a result, Zhao Jin couldn't help but pull a long face when he heard these words. Xiao Tian, who was behind him, curled his lips and smiled faintly. Sharp-tongued brat. Zhao Jin's expression was dark and solemn as he cursed in a low voice. Immediately, a frightening aura and pressure abruptly spread from his body. The powerful pressure immediately caused the expressions of quite a number of people present to change. Even the expression on Xiao Yan's face had become grave. The Genesis Qi in his body was swiftly maneuvered. While resisting the pressure, he was also preparing to face Zhao Jin's next move. Xiao Yan, I originally did not intend to pursue the matter of you injuring my son a month ago on account of you being a junior. However, I never expected you to be so stubborn and mischievous. Since that's the case, I have no choice but to teach you a lesson on behalf of your ancestor. Zhao Jin's eyes were dense as he stared at Xiao Yan. A ferocious smile surfaced on his face. Being the clan head of the Zhao clan, he was naturally aware that Shuyang City was a territory that the Xiao clan was in charge of. Even if the members of the Xiao clan did not have a good impression of Xiao Yan, they would definitely not allow him to attack. However, it was not difficult to teach Xiao Yan a lesson before the experts from the Xiao clan arrived. As for the outcome, it was likely that the Xiao clan would not be overly entangled as long as Xiao Yan did not die. A cold glint surged within Zhao Jin's eyes as he let out a cold laugh. His body suddenly flashed forward and rushed toward Xiao Yan in a lightning-like manner. At the same time, a frightening wind that contained a powerful pressure swept forward with him. Xiao Yan's expression changed rapidly. Genesis Qi gushed out from his body without reservation, and the heavy Xian ruler reflexively appeared in his hand as he prepared to meet Zhao Jin's attack. Bas! Immediately after, another powerful wave of energy soared into the sky. The powerful pressure formed an invisible barrier in front of Xiao Yan and the others. Anan, who had been enduring silently, finally took a heavy step forward. He looked up at Zhao Jin with a grave expression, gritted his teeth, and threw out a palm strike. Boom! A muffled collision suddenly rang out, attracting the attention of many people in the surrounding area. Astonished gazes quickly converged on the scene. Zhao Jin stood still while Anan took a few steps back with a heavy expression. A muffled groan escaped his throat before he looked back at the other side. You dare to stop me? Zhao Jin glared at Anan with a dark expression and said in a chilling voice. I just want to advise Patriarch Zhao to respect himself. You and I are both subordinates of the Xiao clan. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the higher-ups for attacking a member of the Xiao clan in public? He's just a trifling outsider. With my status, even if I killed him, so what? Get the hell out of my way. With a furious roar, Zhao Jin waved his sleeve and shot out a powerful stream of energy towards Anan. The latter's expression changed rapidly. As he retreated, Genesis Qi gushed out from his body. Just as he was about to attack, everyone suddenly heard the ear-piercing cry of a sword. Then, the stream of energy was cut in half by a scarlet-red sword. At the same time, a disdainful and mocking laughter rang out. Patriarch Zhao is truly awe-inspiring. You're a mighty origin venerate, Yet you've personally taken action to deal with the Origin Sect Jr. Once news of this spreads, I'm afraid that not only will you be branded as someone who bullies the weak, but you'll also be accused of overstepping your authority. A middle-aged man wearing a crimson long robe slowly appeared in front of everyone's sight after the laughter sounded. His body blocked the front of Xiao Yan's group. He curled his mouth and his face carried ridicule as he looked at Zhao Jin. Fan Jian, you're here? Seeing this person, Zhao Jin's expression instantly changed. He couldn't help but exclaim as he stared at the red-robed middle-aged man in front of him in surprise. On the other side, while Xiao Yan was staring at the figure in front of him in bewilderment, a fair hand gently landed on his shoulder. Bas! Xiao Yan's heart was greatly alarmed in an instant. He subconsciously raised the giant ruler in his hand as the Genesis chi in his body immediately erupted. When he turned his head, the first thing that entered his eyes was a familiar handsome face. All the movements of his hands came to a sudden halt at this moment. Chapter 14:12. We have not seen each other for a month. Why is Brother Xiao acting like this? Xiao Yan's group was standing in front of an empty space surrounded by people in Shuyang City. At this moment, there was a handsome young man in white robes beside Xiao Yan. He was smiling as he looked at the person in front of him. At this moment, Xiao Yan's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at the smiling handsome young man in front of him. Shui Miao! Xiao Yan involuntarily exclaimed as he stared at the person in front of him with shocked eyes. His heart was filled with surprise. It had been a month since they last met. It was unexpected that they would meet again under the rule of the Xiao clan. At the same time, Zhao Jin's expression was ugly as he stared at the red-robed middle-aged man in front of him. Even if he had thought of everything, he would never have expected that this person would help Xiao Yan's group. Fan Jian, this is a matter of my Xiao clan. You dare to intervene? Humph humph, you dare to call yourself the Xiao clan? What a joke. You! Zhao Jin was about to be furious. However, his eyes quickly flashed as he saw the white-clothed young man standing beside Xiao Yan. His heart trembled slightly as he quietly muttered. The heir of the Ouyang clan? Why is he here? Moreover, he is standing together with this little bastard Xiao Yan. Zhao Jin's eyes rotated as he looked at the two people who were chatting with each other. A glint flashed deep within his eyes. Shuyang City is under the rule of the Xiao clan. Why are you here? Xiao Yan only recovered after they chatted and laughed. Under normal circumstances, the three clans would not interact with each other in order to avoid any misunderstandings. However, Ouyang Miao had appeared in the territory of the Xiao clan today. This was really difficult to fathom. Haha, we are naturally here for you. Ouyang Miao looked at Xiao Yan with some meaning as he softly laughed. For me? Xiao Yan was momentarily at a loss. He could not help but feel somewhat stunned. Before he could recover, the latter continued. We should have headed all the way to Xiao City to meet you. However, along the way, we heard that there was news of an E-class Do skill being auctioned in Shuyang City. Therefore, we came to take a look out of curiosity. It is unexpected that you are also here. This has saved us a lot of trouble. The we you're talking about are. Hearing the strangeness in his words, Xiao Yan's gaze immediately turned to the red-robed middle-aged man in the field. Only then did he realize that this mysterious expert was actually on the same side as Ouyang Miao. No wonder he would take action. Senior. Haha, we'll talk about other things later. Let's solve the problem here first. Before the words from Xiao Yan's mouth sounded, Ouyang Miao gently patted Xiao Yan's shoulder. He immediately turned his head to the red-robed middle-aged man in the arena and laughed. Uncle Jian, sorry to trouble you. Ha 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 ha, it's a piece of cake. The middle-aged man who was addressed as Uncle Jian turned his head and laughed heartily. He rubbed his palms together and the red sword that had flashed before everyone's eyes previously landed in his hands. His sharp gaze then landed on Zhao Jin. Fan Jian, I've only heard that you've joined the Ouyang clan. To think that it's actually true. You, who have always been proud and arrogant, would actually crawl under the feet of others. Looks like you're nothing more than this. Zhao Jin's face was cold as he looked at Fan Jian in front of him and sneered in a deep voice. Heh, cut the crap. I've heard that Patriarch Zhao's Ice Grand Dao has already reached perfection. Today, let me have a good taste of it. As his final words sounded, Fan Jian immediately threw out the crimson long sword in his hand. At the same time, his feet stomped on the ground. After which, He directly appeared in front of Zhao Jin. His face was filled with a warm smile. "Humph, since you asked for it, you can't blame anyone else." Zhao Jin's gaze was gloomy as he looked at the smiling Fan Jian in front of him. A sinister glint appeared in his eyes. With a twist of his hand, an extremely cold icicle condensed in the air and gathered in his palm. It transformed into an icy blue spear that cut through the void and rushed towards Fan Jian with lightning speed. Seeing this, Fan Jian chuckled. With a clench of his hand, flames immediately condensed in his palm. The long sword that flew from behind him passed through the flames, bringing along raging flames as it collided with the long spear, receiving all of Zhao Jin's attacks. "The auction is about to begin, so I won't beat around the bush with you. I'll hurry up and fight with you." Withdrawing his long sword, Fan Jian flicked his finger on the body of the sword. The flames on the sword immediately spread out and curled around his body. Amidst a series of roars, the flames turned into a fire dragon. With a deep roar, it pounced towards Zhao Jin. Even someone as strong as Zhao Jin had no choice but to treat Fan Jian's ferocious attack with caution. He immediately slapped his hands together, shattering the ice spear in his hand into countless pieces. Genesis Chi wrapped around the spear as it frantically spun and charged towards the oncoming fire dragon. Bang, 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 bang. The surrounding crowd scattered in all directions, revealing a large area. The clash between the two grew increasingly intense, causing the surrounding energy to churn violently as if it was about to boil. Cries of alarm rang out from the crowd from time to time. Several people had already gathered their Genesis Chi to block the terrifying energy ripples from the clash between the two. Xiao Yan watched the scene that occurred in the midair. His heart was somewhat shocked. After experiencing the battle at the Heavenly Cloud Villa and seeing this scene today, the emotion in his heart involuntarily became anxious. Both of his hands under his sleeves involuntarily tightened. As his horizons continued to expand, coupled with everything that had happened since he had entered the Shao clan, Lin Dong's heart had also become increasingly clear that with his current strength, he would need to use all of his strength to deal with the Origin Zone level expert. It would be even more difficult to make the foolish Shao clan take him seriously. Hence, he needed to raise his strength as soon as possible. To Xiao Yan, raising his strength meant that he needed to obtain a new heavenly flame. The ancestor of the Pill Tower. Where can I find such a person? Xiao Yan could not help but sigh helplessly at the thought of Huozhu's words. What kind of person was the ancestor of the Pill Tower? It was no different from a fool's dream for the current him to meet the ancestor. From the looks of it, he would have to find another way out. Boom! Fan Jian and Zhao Jin's palms clashed again in the air. Fan Jian's sword was thrust forward, while an ice spear was thrust forward. The two were quickly pushed back. Ha 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 ha, how delightful. Try and take my flame luo seal. Fan Jian laughed heartily at the sky. He kept his sword and formed a seal with his hands. Raging flames swiftly gathered between his hands and were quickly sent flying. Humph! Freezing sky palm. Zhao Jin showed no fear in the face of this situation. Chilling Genesis Chi swiftly gathered in his palm as his foot stomped on the air. His figure flashed forward, appearing in front of the giant fire seal a split second later. His expression was solemn as he viciously threw a palm strike. As the palm blasted out, an incomparably cold air suddenly surged out. Like a flash flood, it gushed out from the palm of his hand and attacked the fire seal in an earth-shattering manner. Bang! Under the gazes of countless people below, the two powerhouses were like two shooting stars that streaked across the sky. At that moment, they collided brilliantly, and what followed was an earth-shattering sound that reverberated through the heavens and earth. A terrifying energy storm unfurled in the sky. A giant pitch-black spatial crack was formed at the spot where the two had collided. It was like a gully embedded in space, causing one to involuntarily feel a chill in one's heart when looking at it. The spreading of the energy storm brought about a hurricane that swept across the land. The city below could not help but become restless as cries of surprise continuously rang out. Numerous energy pillars rose, jointly resisting the energy hurricane that was descending from the sky. Haha, it seems that your great Tao of ice is only Oso. Come again. Shameless boasting. Today, this sovereign will convince you. The hurricane scattered as Fan Jian's arrogant laughter rang out once again. Scarlet flames suddenly rose in the air. On the other side, Zhao Jin was completely unafraid. His body jerked as he charged forward once again. Enough! Do you think that you haven't caused enough trouble? It was also at this moment that an aged reprimanding voice suddenly sounded in the world. Almost at the same time, an unparalleled and terrifying pressure immediately enveloped the sky above the arena. As the voice faded, the two individuals in the sky, who were about to attack again, suddenly stopped. Their originally icy gazes were first stunned, before they abruptly returned to their senses. Two pairs of eyes simultaneously looked towards the giant stone tower that towered to the side as fear surged in the depths of their eyes. Chapter 14:13. In Shuyang City, there was a huge plaza outside the auction house. Two figures were standing tall in the air. The two people who were fighting fiercely a moment ago had stopped because of the sound of an old voice. How can it be him? Fan Jian could not help but breathe as he softly muttered with a trembling voice. His eyes could not help but flicker. Soon after, he glanced at Zhao Jin, who was in the air opposite him. At this moment, the fierceness on the latter's face had long disappeared and was replaced by a submissive expression. His eyes were also filled with astonishment. Compared to before, the current him was like a completely different person. Fan Jian trembled as he exhaled. His gaze slowly swept across the messy ground below, and then looked at the square, where the atmosphere was a little tense. His gaze turned, and he did not hesitate to bow in the direction of the stone tower. He respectfully bowed, and then retracted the astonishing aura that he had released. Fan Jian withdrew his gaze and quickly locked onto Yangmiao, who was standing together with Xiao Yan. He gently nodded, raised his eyes, and revealed a row of white teeth at Zhao Jin. With a cold smile, his body moved, and in a flash, he landed on the ground. After feeling the pressure above his head disappear, Fan Jian once again deeply exhaled. He calmed himself down and walked towards Xiao Yan and Yangmiao. Zhao Jin, on the other hand, was a little unwilling as he clenched his teeth. He quickly glanced at the huge stone tower with fear in his heart. As his body descended, his cold gaze swept across Xiao Yan and Yangmiao. Immediately, he frowned, took a deep breath, and stared at Xiao Yan below. At a certain moment, he strangely sneered and muttered, "This time, I want to see how you will stay in the Xiao clan." Junior Xiao Yan thanks Senior for your help. Seeing Fan Jian walk forward in a majestic manner, Xiao Yan did not dare to be negligent as he hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. It's fine. Given Zhao Jin's character, I have long wanted to meet him. Today was just an opportunity. If it weren't for that person stopping me, I would have already skinned him alive. Fan Jian gently waved his hand when he saw this. His gaze involuntarily glanced at the enormous black tower standing behind Xiao Yan. An expression of fear flashed across his eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Yan could not help but frown. Who exactly was inside the stone tower that could make a source venerable reveal such an expression? Mr. Xiao Yan, you have just returned to the clan and must not be familiar with many of the clan's elders. The owner of the voice from before was the clan's second elder. Appearing to have seen the doubt in Xiao Yan's heart, and Nan by the side hurriedly smiled and stepped forward. After his voice sounded, he did not dare to slight Yangmiao and Fan Jian as he cupped his hands together. Although Xiao Yan was able to face them indifferently, he did not dare to be careless. Forget about anything else. Just Yangmiao's status as the heir was not something that he could easily touch. Second elder? Xiao Yan's brows twitched when he heard Nan's words. His eyes immediately looked to the enormous stone tower behind him. It was unexpected that such a person was hidden within this strange stone tower. The second elder of the Xiao clan. This status was second only to the first elder and the clan head in the clan. Even the latter had to be a little more courteous when meeting him. It was really a strange thing that such a person had appeared outside of the clan. It is said that the second elder has a somewhat strange temperament and does not like to stay in the clan. In order to cultivate, he often resides in this stone tower and has not shown himself for many years. I did not expect him to speak today. Annan slowly spoke as he looked curiously at the huge black stone tower. Fan Jian's expression could not help but turn sluggish when he heard this. He stared blankly at Annan and was speechless in his heart. This was the clan's second elder. With such a status, his location had been revealed so easily. Was he not afraid of being attacked by enemy forces? Don't worry, brat. The fact that the second elder of the Xiao clan is cultivating here is not a secret. In the entire middle region, there are many people who know about this. In terms of strength, there are countless people who want to kill him. However, in comparison, The name Xiao Etian is even more terrifying. Fan Jian chuckled when he saw Xiao Yan's manner. He lifted his head and looked at the small mountain-like stone tower in front of him. His eyes involuntarily flickered with an unusual glint. Xiao Yan's heart was slightly startled when he heard this. Although the former's words were said in a simple manner, Xiao Yan also understood that when one's cultivation reached Fan Jian's level, every word he said was not baseless. Just imagine how powerful this Xiao clan's second elder was to be able to intimidate so many people with just a name. Xiao Etian. Is this the second elder's name? He is indeed extremely heroic. Not only heroic. According to what I know, ever since the second elder's name was established, he has experienced countless battles, both big and small, and has never been defeated in his life. The only time. At the mention of Xiao Etian, even with Annan's current cultivation, a hint of reverence couldn't help but surface on his face. Even Fan Jian, who was at the side, took a deep breath and nodded heavily. However, at the end of their words, the two of them fell silent. After pausing for a moment, their gazes involuntarily landed on Ouyang Miao. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's expression was startled at first, then his eyes flashed as if he had thought of something. After that, he looked deeply at the huge black stone tower that stood quietly and sighed softly. If we continue to talk, the auction will probably end soon. Just as Xiao Yan was lost in thought, Ouyang Miao's words suddenly broke the strange atmosphere between the few people present. Everyone immediately came back to their senses. Only then did they notice that Zhao Jin's group had already disappeared. They must have entered the auction house. Looking at the long queue in front of him, Xiao Yan frowned slightly. Seeing this, Annan immediately stepped forward and chuckled. Everyone, don't be anxious. Please follow me. Compared to the former few people, Annan was naturally very familiar with this place. With him in front, everyone could save a lot of trouble. Following Annan, everyone bypassed many people along the way and walked toward a certain location in the auction house. Mr. Xiao Yan, this is the first time you have come to Shuyang City, so you don't know the rules here. I won't say anything else, but there is one thing. As long as you are a member of Xiao Clan, you will get as much convenience as possible here if you take out your identity jade token. Seeing the vision in front gradually emptying out, and a stone door that no one could pass through stood at the foot of the high wall. While Xiao Yan was surprised, Annan's words immediately came into his ears. When he heard this, the jade token that Xiao Linger held in her hand the other day immediately appeared in the latter's mind, and he instantly understood in his heart. He never imagined that a small jade token would actually have such an effect. But unfortunately, he didn't have it. Chapter 14:14. Xiao Yan's group successfully entered the auction house under Annan's lead. After passing through a gently lit tunnel for a few minutes, the view in front of everyone suddenly became spacious. Soon after, a gigantic auction house appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The huge auction house was shaped like a fan. From the top to the bottom, everyone was standing at the top. TSKSK. This auction house is actually set up underground. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows. He involuntarily clicked his tongue twice in amazement. His heart was surprised by the design of this auction house. Even Fan Jian and Ouyang Miao by the side were looking at this enormous auction house with great interest. Everyone looked over. The entire auction house was densely packed with countless seats. Compared to the scene that everyone had seen outside, the huge space that appeared in front of everyone's eyes had exceeded everyone's expectations. The huge auction house was already filled with people at this moment. Before the official auction, various kinds of noise continued to resound. When they gathered together, it appeared quite noisy. What everyone is seeing now is only a quarter of this auction house. This auction house is divided into Heaven, Earth, Xian and Huang. The space within each auction house is the same. The difference lies in the level and price of the items being auctioned. The auction house that we are currently in is the Heaven class auction house. Annan smiled faintly when he saw the expressions on the few people's faces. He turned his gaze and a female servant, who was quite pretty and dressed in revealing clothes, quickly stepped forward to welcome them. She respectfully said, "Sirs, may I know if there are any reserved seats?" Xiao Yan's eyes swept over this female servant. After which, he glanced at some of the more spacious spectator seats a short distance away. Immediately, he shook his head in a bored manner. Such a crude tactic was something that people would do regardless of the strength of the era. Even a clan as strong as the Shao clan was no exception. On the side, Bai Hua's face changed slightly when she saw the scene in the auction house at this moment. She quickly covered the beautiful eyes of the girl beside her with one hand to block her curious gaze. The rest of the people had a tacit understanding. For this kind of thing, not to mention the Shao clan, most forces in the central region would not do less. As for the reason, it was needless to say. Anan wasn't surprised by this. He handed out a jade token casually. After the maid saw it, the expression on her delicate cheeks became more respectful and humble. She bowed respectfully to the group of people and said, "Master, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Sirs, please follow me." The female servant turned around after she spoke. She swayed her snake-like slender waist as she led the way in front. Everyone behind her followed closely without looking sideways. The group of people bypassed a few corridors under the lead of the female servant. After a long while, they finally stopped outside a private room near the front row of the auction house. They then bowed and retreated. In this regard, everyone was quite familiar with this. After entering the private room, everyone sat down. The noise behind them was immediately isolated. Even their mood was much better. Looking through the light curtain in front of them, the auction stage appeared to be right in front of them. Everything in the auction house could be seen. Raising their gazes, Xiao Yan and the others quickly saw Zhao Jin and the others standing in a similar private room on the opposite side of the auction stage. When the two sides met, their faces were naturally not good. They looked at each other with cold eyes. The atmosphere in the two private rooms unconsciously became tense. However, Anan waved his hand sensibly. The light curtain in front of everyone immediately became blurred. Zhao Jin and others on the opposite side were naturally blocked. At this moment, the only thing they could see was still the scene in the auction house. He shook his head lightly and suppressed the emotions in his heart. He turned to look at Yangmiao beside him. He stared at the latter with a curious face and pursed his lips. "By the way, why are you looking for me this time?" Hearing this, Yangmiao withdrew his gaze that was looking outside. Immediately after, he smiled and nodded. At the same time, a light flashed in his hand and a jade slip appeared in his palm. Immediately after, he handed it over. "This is what my second uncle asked me to give to you." "Sword Saint Yulan." Xiao Yan's eyes flashed. He could not help but feel surprised in his heart as he looked at the jade token that was handed over. He hesitated for an instant before receiving it. After which, he slowly shut his eyes and inserted a thread of spiritual strength into it to take a look. Hua! After a short 10+ breaths, Xiao Yan, who had focused his attention on the jade token, suddenly withdrew his mind. His body suddenly stood up and his hand, which was holding the jade token, tightened. A pair of dark black eyes suddenly opened. Both of his eyes were filled with an excitement that was difficult to hide. This is... The muscles at the corner of Xiao Yan's eyes twitched. He slowly lowered his head and stared intently at the jade slip in his hand. His face was filled with disbelief as he opened his mouth with difficulty. Inside this jade slip was the Emperor Seal skill that Xiao Yan had seen the ancient clan member use back then. In comparison, the God Seal skill that was recorded in the jade token in his hand was even more complete and refined. Not only did it merge the first 5 seals that he had learned, but it had also been refined and refined, causing its strength to become even greater. The things that caused Xiao Yan to raise his eyebrows were naturally the last 3 seals of this God Seal skill. According to the description in the jade slip, this Emperor Seal skill was also known as the 8 Emperor Seal skills. It was divided into the Open Mountain Seal, Sea Flipping Seal, Land Overturning Seal, Sky Burying Seal, Ancient God Seal, Mountain River Seal, Chenkuan Seal, and Celestial Seal. When the first 5 seals were combined, its strength was comparable to a human class Do technique. Its strength was even stronger than the technique that Xiao Yan had learned. If the seals were connected and the 8 seals were combined, it would be enough to destroy the world. Its strength was comparable to a Shang class Do technique. Ignoring everything else, just the words Shang class Do technique alone was enough to attract the attention of the current Xiao Yan. Ever since he had learned the Emperor Seal skill, he had used it to defeat many opponents. However, as his strength grew, a Tian class Do technique was no longer able to restrain him. Now that he used the Emperor Seal skill again, its strength was undoubtedly much weaker. If he wanted to raise its strength, the 8 Emperor Seal skills in his hand was undoubtedly the best choice. Cuckoo, second uncle is aware that you are fated with this Emperor Seal skill. Therefore, He ordered me to come and pass it to you. Yang smiled faintly. The words that were spat out from his mouth caused the expressions of the few people present to change. Even Fan Jian involuntarily glanced at Xiao. Clearly, he did not dare to underestimate the Emperor Seal's skill in his heart. But this... accept it. I can tell that this thing should be of great help to you. Treat it as me giving it to you on account that we are friends. At the very most, you can treat it as a favor that you owe me. You can return it in the future. Xiao had just opened his mouth when Yang interrupted him. He naturally understood the concern in Xiao heart. However, from his meeting with Zhao Jin today, it was obvious that the latter was not well liked in the Xiao clan. From a certain point of view, the arrival of the Emperor Seal skill at such a time was no different from providing charcoal in snowy weather. Clang! While Xiao was frowning and deep in thought, a clear gong sound suddenly sounded from the middle of the auction ground. Immediately, it swayed and reverberated throughout the entire auction ground. The buzzing gong sound gradually suppressed the noise in the auction ground. As the gong sound slowly sounded, the countless number of gazes in the auction ground gathered towards the middle of the auction stage. At this moment, everyone clearly understood in their hearts that a good show was finally about to begin. Chapter 14-15. As the sound of the bells slowly faded away, a circle of golden runes suddenly lit up on the auction stage. Soon after, the runes gradually spread until they covered the entire auction stage. Golden light suddenly flashed on the runes, and golden ripples rapidly climbed up like water waves. Finally, they formed a huge energy barrier that enveloped the entire auction stage. Although Shuyang City's auction house was a subordinate force of the Xiao clan, there was no lack of powerful outlaws on the continent. Even if the auction house was under the Xiao clan's control, it would still give those outlaws an opportunity to take advantage of their carelessness. Previously, when the group had just arrived, Xiao had used his spiritual strength to roughly observe the situation. Soon after, he discovered that in the auction house, other than the 2 private rooms that they and the Zhao clan were in, there were at least 3 other private rooms that had people in them. Although he was unable to detect their auras, it was not difficult to guess that the strength of these people was at least at the same level as Anan, or even at the level of a source venerate. In addition, with the continuous influx of people in the auction house, the seats in the auction house were almost fully occupied. At this moment, there were also a few extremely obscure auras present in the viewing platform. Since these people were able to conceal their strength from Xiao spiritual perception, if they were not at the level of a source zone, then they were experts who had used special secret techniques. These people were undoubtedly not easy to deal with. With so many experts of such cultivation gathered in one place, even if Shuyang City was under the Xiao clan's control, they had to be extra careful. As the energy barrier extended up the auction stage, a circle of golden light flickered in the middle of the auction stage. Gorgeous rays of light shot out in all directions, causing everyone present to involuntarily narrow their eyes. Their gazes were firmly fixed on the center of the light, where they could faintly see a figure. When the light dissipated, an old man wearing a brocade robe appeared in front of everyone with a smile on his face. The moment this person appeared, a vigorous and majestic pressure slowly spread out from his body. Under this terrifying pressure, all the noise in the huge auction house came to an abrupt halt. Countless gazes filled with various expressions gathered in one place. Everyone could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. It was as if the air had frozen, and the entire space had become silent. What a powerful aura! Xiao eyes shrank slightly. Although this private room was able to isolate all auras from the outside world, it did not hinder his spiritual perception. At this moment, he had just unleashed his spiritual strength when he immediately sensed the shocking pressure that filled the entire place. This mysterious old man in front of him was a Yuan Zun class expert. Yes. Ouyang Miao nodded slightly. The old man's aura was so strong that he could tell that his cultivation was not inferior to Bai Rong, who had followed Bai Ruoxuan that day. In fact, he might even be slightly stronger. Xiao Qua, Xiao clan's inner pavilion elder. He is currently in charge of all matters within and outside Shuyang City. He is also personally in charge of the heavenly auction house. Anan said slowly as he looked at the old man who appeared on the auction stage. Haha, this old man is Xiao Qua. I'm sure that many of you know me. This old man would like to thank everyone for your support in today's auction. Xiao Qua stepped forward and slowly swept his gaze across the room. His gaze paused slightly when it swept past certain places. Then, a hearty laughter rang out and resounded in everyone's ears. The old man's words caused quite a number of people present to laugh. Other than the Xiao clan, Xiaoqua had been in charge of Shuyang City for many years. Hence, he had come into contact with many people from various factions. At this moment, many of the experts present had some kind of deep or shallow relationship with him. Hearing the laughter, Xiaoqua smiled and turned his gaze. When his gaze swept past the private room where Xiao Yan and the others were, he paused for a moment. Almost at the same time, Xiao Yan, who was in the private room, suddenly narrowed his eyes and stared at Xiaoqua. His entire body felt numb at this moment. Although the two of them were separated by the private room, he did not know why, but at that moment, he had an illusion that he was completely exposed to Xiaoqua's gaze. Haha, everyone, since we are all old friends, there is no need for this old man to explain the rules here. While Xiao Yan was being shocked in his heart, Xiaoqua had already recovered his gaze. He once again looked at the arena and opened his mouth faintly in front of everyone's gazes at him. At the same time, a dense chill suddenly swept over everyone's hearts. Everyone's expressions changed. Some of their gazes, which originally contained an obscure glow, calmed down at this moment. Our auction will now begin. Next, I invite everyone to enjoy a grand auction. Ignoring the emotional gazes in the auction ground, Xiaoqua opened his mouth with a smile. At the same time, a hand brushed across the empty space in front of him. Soon after, the empty space immediately twisted and transformed into a floating platform. A shriveled hand slowly imprinted itself on it. Immediately, a suction force surged from his palm. Under everyone's gazes, a mirror-like object was pulled out from the middle of the platform. The universe reincarnation mirror originated from the hands of a peak source venerate. It contains a set of Do techniques. When used together with the reincarnation mirror, its strength is comparable to an E-class Do technique. Xiaoqua gently waved his hand and tossed the mirror in his hand into the air as he softly laughed. The words from his mouth unsurprisingly stirred a wave of cheers in the auction ground. The reason why most of the people in the auction ground had come today was because an E-class Do technique would appear in this auction. However, it was unexpected that an E-class Do technique had already appeared when the auction had just begun. However, an E-class Do technique that could only be used together with a weapon would undoubtedly greatly reduce its value. It also caused many people, who were tempted, to abruptly halt their footsteps. This kind of Do technique might be tempting, but asking them to change their weapons, which they had been using for many years, was no different from asking them to change their preferred hand. The gains did not make up for the losses. On the stage, Xiaoqua's old face did not reveal any surprise when he saw this. He merely smiled faintly and continued speaking. It is rumored that the owner of this universe reincarnation mirror had once relied on the cultivation of a source venerate to use this mirror to block an attack from a source sage expert. Clamor. An uproar suddenly sounded in the auction ground after these words were spoken. Numerous heated gazes, which were competing with each other, instantly gathered on the ancient mirror. The emotions of everyone present also soared in an instant. If the former could only cause them to be tempted, the words of Xiaoqua at this moment were sufficient to break the final shackle in the hearts of everyone present. In this world, anything that was related to the word source sage was destined to attract a countless number of people to go crazy over it, even if it was just a small part of it. This universe reincarnation mirror in front of them was the best example. Xiaoqua's gaze slowly swept over the entire auction ground. He smiled with satisfaction when he saw the heated and intense gazes, which were like bloodthirsty ferocious beasts. He gently lifted the ancient mirror in his hand and a warm laughter spread. Cuckoo, I think that everyone present already has an idea of the value of this item. Since that is the case, then, the starting price of the universe reincarnation mirror is 100,000 spirit stones. Each increment must not be less than 50,000 spirit stones. Everyone please. Chapter 14:16. As the words from Xiaoqua's mouth faded, the auction ground immediately erupted into an uproar. Wave after wave of shouting suddenly sounded out like thunder. Numerous shouts instantly rang out in the enormous auction ground. Inside the private room, Xiao Yan looked at the scene that was happening in the auction house with a face of astonishment. He could not help but click his tongue in amazement. 100,000 spirit stones in one go. Even if he added up all the spirit stones he had on him, he would not be able to reach such an amount. However, for most of the people present, it was so easy for them to blurt out such an amount. This was simply unimaginable. Within a short period of time, the bids in the auction house had already reached 450,000 spiritual stones. This amount of spiritual stones was enough to create a third-rate faction. However, at this moment, it was actually so simple in the auction house. It was passed with a single sentence. Hearing the waves of bids that were still ringing out around him, even Xiao Yan could not help but look at Xiao Qua in a new light. As expected of the person in charge of Shuyang City, he was indeed extraordinary. Just by relying on an ancient mirror, one person and one sentence, in a short period of time, he had madly collected hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. This kind of method could be said to be shocking. Of course, although Xiao Qua's method was ingenious, it was not suitable for everyone. For example, in the other private rooms, those people were like him, calmly waiting for the result of this round of auction. They were very clear in their hearts that this was only the beginning, and the real good things would only be left for later. Before that, all the foreplay did not have any attraction. All of this was just to filter out the people who were qualified to auction that treasure. Gently leaning against the back of the chair, Xiao Yan slowly closed his eyes. His finger gently tapped on the armrest of the chair. Hearing the constantly rising price, he could not help but sneer. Originally, it was only 100,000 spirit stones, but at this moment, under the contrast of Xiao Qua several times, it was actually close to 1 million. Moreover, looking at the situation in the auction house, it did not seem to have any intention of slowing down. "Brother Xiao Yan, are you willing to believe me?" At this moment, Ouyang Miao's voice suddenly sounded in Xiao Yan's ears. Seeing that the others around him did not react, it was likely that only the two of them knew about this voice. "Brother Ouyang, what do you mean?" After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Yan still replied in confusion. "As a student of Beihai College, I have received guidance from the dean, so I can more or less be considered half a disciple of the dean. In addition, I also know that you do not belong to this continent, so I do not want to lie to you." Hearing Ouyang Miao's words, Xiao Yan was extremely surprised in his heart. However, Ouyang Miao's next words caused him to ponder even more. "From today on, I can guess that you are not living a good life in the Xiao clan. If you can't live in the clan, I promise. If there is a day, I..." After saying this, Xiao Yan slowly opened his closed eyes. He turned his gaze and coincidentally met Ouyang Miao's eyes. The two looked at each other without saying a word, as if they were communicating with each other in their hearts. Then the former fell into deep thought, while Ouyang Miao relaxed his body and leaned back in his chair. He imitated Xiao Yan and tapped his fingers on the armrest of the chair, as if waiting for his reply. A few minutes later, "Brother Ouyang, I feel like an old friend at first sight. Naturally, I believe in you. I'm also willing to believe in the Ouyang clan. However, I appreciate Brother Ouyang's kind intentions. I'm doing well in the Xiao clan. What you've seen today is just some prejudice that occasionally arises because of the public opinion. I'll resolve it." As soon as Ouyang Miao finished speaking, his tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. His hand, which was tapping on the armrest of the chair, suddenly clenched tightly. The people around him also noticed it. Ouyang Miao slowly released his hand. His face was calm as he waved his hand. Everyone retracted their gazes. Ouyang Miao and Xiao Yan looked at each other again. In the end, Ouyang Miao nodded and smiled at Xiao Yan. The latter also smiled back at him. At this moment, the sound of 3 wooden mallets being struck suddenly rang out from the auction stage, attracting everyone's attention. The final price of the universe reincarnation mirror is 800,000 spiritual stones. Xiao Qua smiled as he looked at everyone in the auction. The wooden mallet in his hand fell. 800,000 spiritual stones. This had far exceeded the value of the auction item. The first item of this auction could be said to have been successfully auctioned off in the most perfect manner. It could be said to be a great harvest. After the first round of intense auction, the atmosphere in the auction house was completely stirred up. Xiao Qua was naturally well versed in this. After striking while the iron was hot, he consecutively auctioned off several items. In addition to his own various embellishments, the following items were all sold at a good price. Time swiftly flowed by while this atmosphere was maintained. Unknowingly, this kind of fiery atmosphere had already continued for over 2 hours under this kind of fiery atmosphere. Following the increasing quality and value of the auction items that appeared in the arena, some of the things that appeared during this period of time caused Xiao Yan to feel an incomparable desire. Even those true experts in the viewing gallery had finally successively made their moves. With their addition, The atmosphere in the arena had become incomparably fiery hot. When the experts competed, it was difficult to determine the winner. Several factions in the auction house argued endlessly, and the price of the auction items naturally rose rapidly. In this regard, although Xiaoqua on the stage only had a smile on his face, it was needless to say how he was feeling in his heart. As for the disputes outside the auction house, as long as they did not fight, the auction house would not interfere. The atmosphere in the auction house naturally became more and more tense and fiery. Xiao Yan was involuntarily a little speechless in the face of those fellows who had fought until their eyes turned red because of an auction item. He withdrew his gaze and suddenly saw the calm expression of Ouyang Miao by the side. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind and his heart quivered. Immediately, Xiao Yan's gaze slowly stopped on Ouyang Miao. The latter turned his head as if he sensed Xiao Yan's gaze. The two looked at each other, and their hearts were filled with different thoughts. Brother Ouyang, previously if I had followed your wishes, would you have made me your enemy? Xiao Yan stared at Ouyang Miao. He did not think too much about it before, but when he glanced at Ouyang Miao for a moment, he suddenly realized that although Ouyang Miao's words seemed to express his true feelings, there was also a trace of probing. If one did not think carefully, it was really difficult to detect. Haha, Brother Xiao, you worry too much. Aren't we still friends now? Ouyang Miao did not seem to be surprised when he heard this. He only smiled slightly and played it down. However, Xiao Yan could vaguely feel the meaning in Ouyang Miao's eyes. If one were to think about it from another angle, Xiao Yan might not be welcomed within the Xiao clan, but he was ultimately still a member of the Xiao clan. The bloodline of the Xiao clan flowed within his bones. Blood was thicker than water and could not be separated. If he were to really abandon the Xiao clan and join the Ouyang clan, how could a person who could betray his blood relative clan be loyal to an unfamiliar clan that he had no relationship with? Ouyang Miao's probing this time was really deep. At this moment, Xiaoqua's meaningful laughter rang out on the auction stage again. His shocking words were like thunder, exploding in the entire auction house. Haha, everyone must confirm the number of spirit stones in your hands to ensure that you can obtain this auction item, because this auction item is a grade 8 pill. Chapter 14:17. A rank 8 medicinal pill. Once these 4 words were spoken, it instantly stirred a great commotion in the auction ground. An uproar resounded throughout the place. Everyone's gazes, including those in the private rooms on the stage, were instantly attracted by Xiaoqua's words. Even the current Xiao Yan could not help but feel his heart move. A ripple rose on his face as his gaze, which was filled with interest, was thrown toward Xiaoqua in the middle of the auction stage for the first time. On the auction stage, when Xiaoqua saw this scene, the smile on his old face became even warmer. He chuckled, and under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, his shriveled hand once again touched the stone platform in front of him. Soon after, a palm-sized jade box appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Opening the jade box, a suction force slowly gushed out from Xiaoqua's right palm. He carefully took out a longan-sized medicinal pill and raised it slightly towards the auction house. The medicinal pill's entire body could be considered round and smooth. However, under Xiao Yan's gaze, he discovered that its color was mottled. The originally rich pill fragrance was currently scattered in all directions like smoke. It did not take shape, nor did it transform into a dragon. If one looked carefully, one could even discover that there were some bumps on the surface of the medicinal pill. This medicinal pill is not a finished pill. It is just a defective product that failed to be refined. After realizing this, the original expectations in Xiao Yan's heart immediately decreased by a lot. The value of this so-called rank 8 medicinal pill in his eyes naturally decreased as well. A medicinal pill that could not even be considered a semi-finished product. So what if he accepted it? It could be said to be worthless. However, just as Xiao Yan was shaking his head and sighing, Bai Hua, who was behind him, pressed her hand on his shoulder and whispered with certainty. His eyes flashed slightly. Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little surprised in his heart. Could it be that he had misjudged? In the auction house, following the appearance of the medicinal pill, the fervent gazes of many experts changed. It was obvious that they had also discovered the problem with this medicinal pill. Immediately after, the countless gazes that were filled with excitement a moment ago began to converge. On the auction stage, the smile on Xiaoqua's face was still warm as he watched this scene unfold. His old eyes slowly swept across the entire auction house, as if he had already expected all of this. When the excitement in the auction house reached its lowest point, Xiaoqua finally opened his mouth once again. Everyone, have you heard of the nature pill? As these words fell, the auction house instantly fell silent. These 3 simple words reverberated in the ears of countless experts. There were even some people who were discussing the various matters related to this medicinal pill. In the private room, the instant that Xiao Yan heard this name, his entire face suddenly tensed up. His originally curious gaze was now filled with passion as he looked towards the medicinal pill. The nature pill was a grade 8 pill. Although it could not be considered a top-tier medicinal pill, this pill had an astonishing effect that would make everyone go crazy. It could cleanse one's muscles and marrow, allowing one to be reborn. Once consumed, one was destined to become a source venerate expert. According to what Xiao Yan knew, the original pill formula of the creation pill had long been buried in the long river of history. Currently, there was no one in this world who knew the refining method of the creation pill. Although the creation pill in front of him was a defective product, if he could use this medicinal pill to understand the medicinal theory behind it, he might have the opportunity to recreate the creation pill. Haha, it is merely a failed refining pill. Even if it is the famous nature pill, it has ultimately lost its original value. Currently, the only people in the world who can be interested in it are alchemists. A slightly hoarse old voice suddenly rang out in the quiet auction house. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw an old man wearing alchemist robes slowly standing up at a certain spot in the viewing gallery. The badge on his chest that indicated his identity as a Pill Tower member caused the expressions of quite a few people in the auction house to change. Therefore, from what I see right now, I am the only alchemist present. Since it's like this, I will suffer a bit of a loss and take out a 7th-level medicinal pill to win this failed product. The old man's cold gaze swept across the entire auction house. His mouth parted into a smile as he faintly laughed while stroking his beard with one hand. The moment his voice sounded, he waved his sleeve and a ray of light immediately shot towards the auction stage. Although the expressions of everyone present were filled with dissatisfaction when they saw this, they could only return to their seats when they thought of the Pill Tower badge on the old man's chest. On the auction stage, Xiaoqua was also frowning because of this scene. He was naturally clear that this old man had purposely pointed out the flaws of this nature pill and had the intention of using the name of the Pill Tower to suppress everyone. His goal was to use this mere grade 7 pill to purchase it. Under such circumstances, if no one bid against him, it was likely that the auction house would have no choice but to reluctantly sell it regardless of how low his bid was. Damn it! The muscles on Xiaoqua's face involuntarily twitched as he looked at the medicinal pill that was shot over like a meteor. Although he forcefully maintained a smile on his face, his mood was already extremely terrible. Their expectations of this nature pill were over 1,000,000 spirit stones. Now, this fellow actually wanted to purchase it with a grade 7 pill. The loss in this could not be said to be small. I bid 3 grade 7 pills. However, just as everyone present thought that the revival pill would fall into the old man's hands, a clear and bright voice suddenly rang out from one of the private rooms. It was as if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in this quiet space. Buzz! Almost at the same time, the medicinal pill that was flying through the air was stopped by an invisible force. With a swoosh, it shot towards the old man on the viewing platform. On the auction stage, Xiaoqua's face regained its smile. As long as someone was willing to break the current situation, it meant that this nature pill could be raised to an even higher price. 3 grade 7 pills. Everyone. Is there anyone who is willing to bid a higher price? Xiaoqua's gaze paused on the private room where Xiao Yan and the rest were located. He nodded his head and laughed softly. Soon after, he swept his gaze across the crowd and smiled. At the same time, the old man on the viewing platform waved his sleeve and kept the medicinal pill that had been shot over. Soon after, he looked towards the private room where Xiao Yan and the rest were located with an unhappy expression. After a slight hesitation, he said in a deep voice, "This old man bids 4 pills. 5 pills." In the private room, a calm voice immediately sounded out. The old man's furrowed brows immediately twisted into a ball. His sullen gaze stared fixedly at the private room. The hands under his sleeves slowly clenched. After some hesitation, he finally opened his mouth and said, 6 grade 7 pills. If you are able to bid a higher price, this old man will let you have them. Before the situation was clear, any bid on the stage could be the work of the auction house. However, once the old man's words came out, in a situation where there were no outsiders participating, There was no room for choice. Unless I bid 7 pills. In the private room, Xiao Yan's gaze met with Xiao Kua's as he spoke with a smile. Chapter 14:18. With the 7 Tier 7 medicinal pills, this creation pill could be considered to have landed in Xiao Yan's pocket. At the same time, everyone understood that the man in the VIP room had already offended the person from the pill tower. Xiao Yan slowly leaned back in his chair. His face was calm and indifferent. Since he had made a move, he was not afraid of offending the other party. Moreover, this was an auction. If one wanted to obtain the auction item, one would have to rely on one's own ability. If one had to withdraw because of one's status, this auction would naturally lose its original meaning. Even the person from the pill tower has to suffer in your hands. Such an attitude is indeed worthy of being Brother Xiao. By the side, Yang Miao clapped. A soft laughter with a mocking tone was spat out. Xiao Yan shook his head in a non-committal manner and did not mind. Although that old man was a member of the pill tower, there was no reason for him to withdraw. If the other party did not know when to stop, at the very most, there would be one more enemy. And Nan quietly observed the 2 people beside him. A glint flickered deep within his eyes. The thoughts in his heart also began to rotate. After this small interlude outside of the auction would naturally continue. Very quickly, the low tide that was brought about by the location of the creation pill was swiftly drowned by the waves of intense fiery atmosphere that followed. With the flow of time, the atmosphere within the auction ground also became increasingly heated. At this moment, the auction items that had appeared in the auction ground were already able to attract the attention of the various experts in the front row of the private rooms. An uncountable number of spirit stones, medicinal pills, and high-class qi methods and do techniques had all become the price tag of this auction. There were even some auction items whose value was so high that they could be called sky-high. Most of the auctioneers in the viewing gallery had also gradually changed from the initial bidding to the audience's attitude. Even though this was the case, when everyone saw Xiao Ku take out one after another treasures that tugged at their heartstrings on the auction stage, the emotions in their hearts couldn't help but become intense. Even though the process of the auction had almost nothing to do with them, it was still a fortunate thing to be able to personally witness those great powers in the front row endlessly fighting over the treasures. In this way, they could be considered to have not come in vain. Ever since the auction of the creation pill, Xiao Yan had rarely made a move. The only reason he would occasionally bid was because he had taken a fancy to some rare medicinal ingredients. However, the person from the pill tower who had appeared during the auction had basically snatched all the treasures that Xiao Yan had obtained. Of course, given the former's character, it was naturally unavoidable for him to provoke the latter a couple of times. After a couple of rounds, both Xiao Yan and the person from the pill tower had suffered quite a lot. However, on the whole, it was still Xiao Yan who had gained the upper hand. Of course, at the end of the day, the final winner was the auction house itself. As the dazzling auction items were taken out one after another on the auction stage, even with Xiao Yan's character, he couldn't help but feel astonished at the rich reserves of this auction house. With so many high-grade items, it could be said that they were enough to cause a stir in the outside world. However, they were able to appear in the same auction at the same time. At this time, even he couldn't help but sigh in admiration of the Xiao clan's foundation. In the next few auctions, Xiao Yan may have obtained some things, but it was difficult for him to find something as tempting as the creation pill from earlier. Fortunately, he had not only met Yang Miao during his trip to Shuyang City and obtained the God Seal from him, but he had also found the Sumera grass and the creation pill. Although he had spent quite a number of spirit stones in this process, in comparison, the current result could be considered a fruitful trip. With the Meru grass in hand, he could prepare to refine the Zong transformation pill once he returned to the Xiao clan. Once the pill was successfully refined, Xiao Xian's cultivation would make a breakthrough and the various troubles would naturally be easily resolved. In addition to the 8 arts of the Emperor Seal, it would undoubtedly become a great trump card during the clan gathering. As for the creation pill, as of now, nothing was set in stone. Whether or not he could use this incomplete pill to comprehend the medicinal theory and refine the real creation pill was still unknown. At the same time, what made him curious was that Bai Hua was also interested in this creation pill. As time passed, the auction gradually came to an end. The value of the auction items that appeared on the stage became more and more shocking. Most of them were some of the most important items in this auction, so much so that even Xiao Yan felt a little excited. Unfortunately, after a few consecutive auctions, the remaining price in his hands could no longer support him. Clang! This continued until a certain moment when Xianxia on the auction stage made the final call. The bell-like sound woke Xiao up from his surging heart. He lifted his head and took a look. Another round of the auction had come to an end. The sky-high price of several million spirit stones in the auction hall caused people to click their tongues in amazement. At this moment, it was likely that only the strong people in the private rooms in the front row were able to take out such a huge amount of money. Xiao Yan's gaze rotated as he thought in this manner in his heart. He followed Xiaoqi's gaze and looked over. Soon after, he knit his brows. Only then did he realize that the person who had bid was none other than Zhao Jin's group, who was currently standing opposite them. When he realized this, Xiao Yan immediately curled his lips. He did not have the slightest good impression of this Zhao family member in his heart. Now that things had come to this, he naturally could not be bothered with them. On the auction stage, after successfully selling the auction item in his hands, the smile on Xiaoqi's old face became increasingly rich. He chuckled as he swept his gaze over everyone present. His turbid eyes contained a hidden profoundness. He paused for a moment and waited for everyone's gazes to once again shoot over. Only then did the old man raise his hands and gently clapped. Immediately, a few rays of light suddenly appeared outside the auction stage. Soon after, a few figures wearing golden robes appeared outside the golden array. After this group of people appeared, they immediately raised their hands and flicked their 10 fingers. Light flashed at the tips of their fingers and many mysterious and obscure seals were formed. As far as everyone's eyes could see, the array on the stage was rapidly solidifying at a speed visible to the naked eye. Looking at the increasingly thick energy array on the auction stage, Xiao Yan could not help but secretly measure it in his heart. Just from this point of view, under the support of the few array masters, the defensive strength of this array had reached an extremely terrifying level. It was likely that even with his current strength, he might not be able to break through it with all his strength. Such extravagance is really terrifying. Seeing this cautious formation on the stage as though they were about to face a great enemy, everyone in the auction house gradually became quiet. There was an unusual atmosphere that gradually shrouded the place, causing the hearts of everyone seated to feel a little pressured. In the face of this unusual situation on the auction stage at this moment, everyone seated were not fools. They immediately understood in their hearts that in order for the auction house to display such an attitude, the next item that was going to be auctioned was likely the E-Class Do Technique scroll that was the most important item in this auction. Seeing the situation on the stage, Xiao Yan also slowly exhaled a breath of air. The finale is finally here. Chapter 14-19. In the enormous auction house, the atmosphere was unusually complicated. Tension, pressure, and excitement all merged into one. The auction stage under the attention of tens of thousands of people was filled with a solemn atmosphere, causing people to not dare to easily approach it. It was no wonder that the security of the auction house was so tight. It was just that the value of this high-level intent Do technique was too high. After all, under the Shang class, the high-level intent Do technique was the strongest. This kind of Qi method Do technique had not appeared on the continent for a long time. As for the Shang class, it was even more of a fantasy. Now that this high-level intent Do technique had appeared in the world, it was inevitable that some unjust people would be attracted to it. The way the auction house did it was to protect its own interests. Cuckoo, I've let everyone see a joke. The next item to be auctioned is a little strange. However, at the same time, it is also the finale of this auction. A scroll of high-level intent Do technique. I believe that there are quite a number of people seated here who have come for it. Xiaoqi's face was filled with a smile as he slowly scanned the entire crowd. Immediately, his palm once again pressed against the stone stage in front of him. A thought passed through his mind and a suction force immediately surged out from his palm. The gazes of the entire crowd also turned. Within the private room, Xiao Yan and the others similarly stared intently at the spot where the palm was pressed against the stone stage. The instant the old man slowly raised his hand, a ray of light was also caught in his hand. As the ray of light entered his hand, the countless number of gazes in the entire auction house instantly gathered like spotlights. On the auction stage, Xiaoqi's face was filled with a smile as he slowly released the thing in his hand and threw it into the air. Everyone's gazes looked over. What entered their eyes was a seemingly ordinary stone pillar. There did not seem to be anything unusual about it. Immediately, some people frowned. Their faces were filled with suspicion as they sized up the stone pillar. After which, they threw their gazes toward Xiaoqi on the stage. Seeing this, Xiaoqi smiled faintly and said, "Cuckoo, Just as everyone has seen, this is the highlight of this auction. It is also the reason why quite a number of people have come here. It is. As he said these words, Xianxia slowly raised his hand. His gaze swept across the entire auction house. The smile in his eyes became increasingly dense. Soon after, a low and deep voice was spat out from his mouth as his finger gently tapped on the stone pillar. Bang! The stone pillar exploded, and an ancient aura quickly spread out. A scroll that had been sealed in the stone pillar for an unknown number of years was also exposed to the air, and reflected in the eyes of everyone present. High-level intent battle technique. Thousand Sealing Ruler. The low and deep voice was just like a heavy bomb that instantly exploded within this enormous auction ground. An invisible storm swept across the enormous space. Countless number of exclamations sounded out. Greedy and heated gazes shot over explosively. Countless number of people stared intently at the ancient scroll on the auction stage. Amongst them included those factions that possessed quite a great amount of power within the VIP rooms in front of the viewing gallery. Feeling the sudden chaos and commotion in the auction house, the array masters in golden robes around the auction stage tightened their faces slightly. They changed the gestures in their hands in unison. Immediately after, light pillars suddenly rose from the bodies of these array masters. The shocking light complemented the tyrannical aura emitted from the array, causing some people who were a little closer to them to feel a chill in their hearts. Their thoughts immediately became a lot clearer. Buzz! It was also at this moment that a majestic aura suddenly burst out from Xiaoqi's body on the auction stage. A pair of deep eyes slowly swept across the auction ground. Following his gaze, the previously chaotic and fiery atmosphere in the auction ground rapidly cooled down as if it had fallen into an ice cellar in the blink of an eye. Everyone in the auction ground also quickly quieted down. Countless obscure gazes gathered on the stage, staring intently at the scroll in front of Xiaoqi. The impulse in their hearts was forcefully suppressed. No one present dared to ignore the pressure of a source venerate. At the same time, in the private room that Xiaoyan was in, the latter was currently standing in front of his seat. His gaze was similar to that of many people in the outside world, staring intently at the scroll floating in midair on the stage. An excited expression involuntarily surfaced on his originally indifferent face. TSK. High-level intent level. What a big deal. My Ouyang clan is not willing to take out a Do technique of this level to auction. Unfortunately, although its level is high, this type of Do technique is too unorthodox and does not attract me. However, Brother Xiao, how confident are you in obtaining it? His gaze immediately landed on Xiao Yan by the side. He had seen Xiao Yan's heavy Xian ruler before. It was used in a grand manner and possessed a great strength. Its strength was extraordinary. At this moment, the thousand sealing ruler in the arena was a ruler technique Do technique. It could be said that it was tailor-made for Xiao Yan. Once he obtained this Do technique, Xiao Yan's fighting strength would undoubtedly advance to a new level. Xiao Yan was slightly startled when he heard this. He immediately smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although the thousand sealing ruler in front of him was indeed quite tempting, he was embarrassingly short of money. It was likely that he had no chance of competing with the other experts present. After such a long period of auction, Xiao Yan had already handed over the remaining 7 rank 7 medicinal pills he had with him during the auction of the manifestation pill. In order to compete with the person from the pill tower during the auction process, he had already exhausted more than half of the spirit stones in his hand. The current him was even poorer than some of the people in the viewing gallery. Where would he find the capital to participate in the competition for the thousand sealing ruler? Ugh! Even Ouyang Miao could not help but be stunned for a moment when he heard Xiao Yan's words. A strange expression immediately surfaced on his face. He had actually run out of capital before the final moment of the auction when he participated in an auction of this level. Moreover, this was with his identity as an alchemist. This was a little too dramatic. If these words were to be heard by others, it was likely that he would be mocked. Xiao Yan helplessly shrugged his shoulders in the face of this. The main purpose of their trip this time around was originally for the Sumeru grass. If it were not for a moment of interest, they would not have hurried to the auction ground. Who would have expected that they would actually encounter such a situation? The appearance of a high-level will-class Do technique was even more difficult to predict. How could they have made preparations in advance? Cuckoo, Mr. Xiao Yan need not be worried. You can just ask. Although our clan does not have a foundation like the Zhao clan, we will definitely do our best to help Mr. Xiao Yan if you need anything. At this moment, Anan, who was seated in front of him, suddenly turned his head around and smiled at Xiaoyan. The meaning behind his words could be considered to have made his position clear. Although the An and Zhao clans were both subordinate to the Xiao clan, at the end of the day, they were doing so for the benefit of their respective clans. Just like how the Zhao clan relied on the three great inner court leaders behind Xiao Tian, the An clan similarly needed their own backing within the Xiao clan. Over the past few years, ever since Zhao Jin's cultivation had broken through to the source venerate level, the Zhao clan had relied on the identity of the three clan leaders within the clan to rise. The status of the clan changed with each passing day. Even some of the elders within the Xiao clan who were in charge of external affairs had no choice but to give some face to this foreign clan. The An clan and the Xiao clan were like fire and water. Naturally, their situation was not much better. Additionally, there was no one in the clan who could help them. Their days under the rule of the Xiao clan had become increasingly tense. If this continued, there would come a day when they would be swallowed up by the Zhao clan. Currently, in this huge clan, this somewhat skinny young man in front of them was actually able to stand up to the three elders who held great authority. He was even able to chat cheerfully and humorously with the heir of the Ouyang clan. It was difficult to find another person with such boldness even in the entire central region. Thus, Xiao Yan had naturally become the pillar that Anan had found for his clan. Xiao Yan's appearance had given the An clan an opportunity to turn over a new leaf. Hence, since the latter had a need, the An clan would definitely not pass on this responsibility. Everyone present was an intelligent person. Everyone roughly understood the meaning behind Anan's words. Ouyang Miao smiled faintly and turned his gaze toward Xiao Yan. The latter also appeared to be deep in thought as he paused. Immediately, he raised his head and looked at Anan in front of him with a smile. In that case, we will rely on the An clan leader. The moment these words were spoken, the few people present immediately laughed out loud. Everyone looked at each other with a tacit understanding. Only Lian Er, who was pouting her small mouth and muttering by the side, had an expression as though she did not fully understand. She appeared extremely adorable. Haha, due to the unique value of this ruler technique Do technique, the auction house has a rule that only items of similar or equal value can be auctioned. If a bid is made using spirit stones, it must be high-grade spirit stones. At this moment, Xiao Qua on the auction stage spoke once again. His words immediately attracted the gazes of Xiao Yan and the others, who were chatting and laughing in the private room. In that case, everyone, please make your bids. Chapter 14:20. As Xiao Qua's voice sounded, the enormous auction ground descended into an unusual silence. Countless number of gazes stared at the ancient scroll on the auction stage. Although a greedy expression surfaced in their eyes, most of them obediently returned to their seats when they recalled the shocking lineup in the auction ground and the shocking price that Xiao Qua had raised. They turned their gazes toward the front row and the few private rooms. At this moment, everyone present understood in their hearts that given the preciousness of this Do technique scroll, an ordinary person did not have the qualification to participate in the auction. Hence, there was no possibility of them obtaining it. Those present who had the qualification and strength to fight for it were only some of the factions seated in the front row and those guests in the private rooms. At this moment, the VIP seats in the front row were similarly completely silent. Even those fellows who harbored hopes in their hearts were waiting calmly at this moment. Their gazes repeatedly swept back and forth, carefully observing the movements of the other factions. However, Xiao Qua's expression did not change in the face of this unusual silence in the auction ground. A warm smile hung on his face as his gaze slowly swept across the auction ground. Everyone clearly understood in their hearts that since the auction had reached such a stage, they would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat once someone took the lead to bid. It was likely that the atmosphere in the entire auction ground would be ignited to the highest point in an instant. At that time, the auction process would also transform into a war without blood covering it. This silence continued for around 5 minutes or so before a hoarse voice finally sounded from a certain VIP seat in the auction ground. 10 high-grade spirit stones. His hoarse voice was just like the sound of a bell as it slowly reverberated beside everyone's ears in this quiet auction ground. The nearly frozen atmosphere in the auction ground was finally broken at this moment. This caused quite a number of people on the stage to bitterly sigh. Xiao Yan's gaze followed the direction from which the voice had originated and looked over. He saw a human figure, whose entire body was wrapped in a black robe, slowly standing up from his seat at the front of the viewing gallery. The words from his mouth had unsurprisingly attracted the gazes of everyone present. 10 high-grade spirit stones. Speaking of which, Xiao Yan did have some in his hands. Xiao Yuheng had ordered someone to send it to him after he had entered the Xiao clan. However, these spirit stones were intended to be used to raise the cultivation of Bai Hua and Lian heir. He did not intend to use them here. Moreover, based on the current situation, the high-grade spirit stones in his hands would not be of any use. On the auction stage, Xiaoqua frowned slightly at the black-robed person. His gaze immediately scanned his surroundings and said, "Is there anyone who offers a higher price than this person?" 20 high-grade spirit stones. Soon after, a low and deep voice was emitted from one of the private rooms in the auction ground. This time around, the situation in the auction ground could be considered to have been completely broken. This bid had just sounded when a chain effect appeared in the auction ground. Successive bids sounded one after another from the front row of the viewing gallery and the surrounding private rooms. Each bid was higher than the previous one. Within a short few minutes, the price of this dough technique had been swiftly raised to nearly 100 high-grade spirit stones. This price was clearly the highest price that had appeared in this auction. Even though this was the case, the craze for this dough technique still did not end. 150 high-grade spirit stones. Within the private room where Xiao Yan and the others were located, Anan, who had rarely made a move during the entire auction, finally slowly spoke. This voice caused an uproar in the entire auction ground. Countless number of gazes that contained surprise were thrown toward this private room. In an instant, the price had been raised by over 50 spirit stones. From the looks of this method, it seemed that he was planning to obtain it in one go. On the auction stage, the smile on Xiaoqua's old face involuntarily became a little denser when he heard this number of spirit stones. His gaze swiftly scanned the entire auction ground. After which, it paused on the private room where the people from the Zhao clan were located. Everyone 150 high-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone who offers a higher price? The surroundings were completely silent. No one made a sound. Xiaoqua narrowed his old eyes. His gaze once again swept across the viewing gallery. Those large factions seated in the front row had bitterly shrunk back at this moment. Their gazes looked all around them and no longer made any moves. 150 spirit stones. Fundamentally speaking, this had already exceeded their limits. At this moment, these people were no longer able to compete with it. After tens of breaths, the auction ground still appeared to be completely silent. It seemed that there was indeed no one who would bid against it. Even Xiaoqua, who was on the stage, could not help but frown. Immediately, he swiftly scanned the entire auction ground. His gaze repeatedly drifted toward the private room where the people from the Zhao clan were located. His heart was filled with suspicion. At this moment, Anan's heart was unusually nervous. Since things had already come to this point, he only needed to wait a little longer. If Zhao Jin still maintained his silence, then he would be able to successfully obtain this 1,000-sealing ruler. He could only hope that the worst outcome in his heart would not occur. At this moment, Xiao Yan's heart was similarly tense. The 1,000-sealing ruler was already within reach. All that was left was for Xiaoqua to drop the hammer and make the final call. Then, everything would be over. In the auction ground, Xiaoqua finally frowned and opened his mouth. The time was up. Even he could not purposely delay the time to call out a price. Everyone, since no one is bidding, then this high-level intent dough technique will. Within the private room, Xiao Yan and the others stared intently at Xiaoqua in the auction ground with hopeful faces. The glow in their eyes gradually became more intense. The 1,000-sealing ruler was finally going to be in their hands. However, just as the final words from Xiaoqua's mouth were about to fade, a shout that contained a cold laugh suddenly sounded in the auction ground. "I bid 200 high-level spirit stones." This voice was like a clap of thunder, forcefully stopping the words that were about to come out of Xiaoqua's mouth. Within the private room, the expressions on the faces of Xiao Yan and the others also came to an abrupt halt. In the entire auction ground, everyone's gazes were instantly gathered on a private room. That private room was located opposite of where Xiao Yan and the others were located. The person who had bid was surprisingly Zhao Jin. Damn it! Xiao Yan's expression immediately sunk. Ouyang Miao and the others beside him also frowned. Zhao Jin's actions were really hateful. On the auction stage, Xiaoqua's old face involuntarily revealed a displeased expression when he saw this. Forget about Xiao Yan and the others. Even he could not bear to continue watching Zhao Jin's actions. However, After carefully considering it in his heart, he still inhaled a deep breath of air. After organizing his emotions, he once again put on a smile on his face. His gaze swept across the entire auction ground and once again said, 200 high-level spirit stones. Is there anyone who wishes to bid higher? Elder Xiao, your actions seem to be a little inappropriate. I have already made my bid earlier. How can I allow someone else to bid now? In the private room, Anan hesitated for a long time before he finally gritted his teeth and shouted. Immediately, many people in the auction house turned their gazes towards Xiao. Xiao was not the only one who had such thoughts. Many people present felt that it was unfair. Since the matter had already been settled, how could they go back on their words? Wouldn't that be breaking the rules of the auction house? Being questioned by Anan and many others, Xiao couldn't help but frown. He glanced at Zhao Jin's location, then looked at the ancient scroll floating in front of him. His gaze swept across the audience, then it fell on the box. Through the light curtain, Xiao looked at Anan and said, "This distinguished guest, I will never take back my words. The previous words are the same, but please be clear. In the auction house, before the hammer in my hand smashes, anyone has the right to continue to bid. Do you still have any questions?" As soon as the words fell, Anan's body trembled violently, then he sat back down. His gaze quickly avoided Xiao's gaze. The cold sweat on his forehead instantly gushed out. It was difficult for him to calm down for a while. Xiao Yan's gloomy face immediately became even uglier when he saw this. His heart swiftly rotated, but before he could do anything, Ouyang Miao by the side suddenly pressed him down. Comforting words were transmitted over. "Sit down and let me do it." Chapter 14:21. Inside the private room, a proud smile immediately surfaced on Zhao Jin's face when he saw that there was no movement from the private room opposite him. Zhao Mingjie, who was beside him, had the same expression on his face. At this moment, the father and son really had the same face. Just based on this point, even if an outsider saw them, they would be able to recognize the relationship between the two of them. Previously, Zhao Jin had purposely held back because he wanted to see this scene. He wanted to push his opponent down from the high altar of joy until he fell to the bottom of the valley. This feeling could be said to be filled with endless twists and turns. At the end of the day, the Yin family was merely a small character in the entire matter of meeting Xiao Yan and the rest today. If it was not for the appearance of Xiao Yan and Fan Jian, it was likely that he would have completely embarrassed Xiao Yan and the rest today, causing them to be unable to establish themselves in the Xiao clan. And Nan's mistake was that he actually chose to be on the same side as Xiao Yan. This point went against Zhao Jin's wishes. This also caused Zhao Jin, who originally did not have a good impression of Nan, to hate him. Now that he had the opportunity to tease Nan, how could he easily let it go? Xiao Tian naturally saw the actions of the father and son. He secretly pondered in his heart. From time to time, he would throw a glance at the father and son with disdain hidden deep within his eyes. The father is not right and the son is not good. With such temperament, it is difficult for him to do anything. Xiao Tian secretly mocked in his heart. His eyes were somewhat suspicious as he looked at Xiao in the auction house. He frowned slightly but ultimately shook his head and did not think any further. His body once again leaned against the back of the chair and he began to rest. 200 high-grade spirit stones. Are there any higher bids? On the auction stage, Xiao's voice once again sounded. However, it was no longer as calm and amiable as before. Instead, there was an additional trace of impatience. At this moment, the people sitting on the stage would no longer bid. The only ones who could hope were those in the private rooms. However, with Zhao Jin in front, it was likely that no one would compete with him. In the private room, Zhao Jin's face was filled with pride. Before coming to the auction, he had made ample preparations. Today, he was determined to obtain the 1,000-ceiling ruler. There was absolutely no one who could stop him. After Xiao's word sounded out, the enormous auction ground once again descended into a silent atmosphere. The scene from before appeared once again. Many people below the stage looked at each other and secretly sneered as they waited for a good show. On the stage, Xiao frowned and the irritation in his heart grew even more intense. Sure enough, just as Xiao was about to strike the hammer, a young man's faint laughter suddenly rang out in the auction house. "I am willing to bid 300 high-grade spirit stones." A scene that was exactly the same as the one from earlier suddenly appeared. Everyone present followed the voice and looked over. The expressions on their faces were slightly startled. Soon after, it turned into a strange expression. The owner of the voice had surprisingly originated from the private room where Xiao Yan's group was located. Inside the box, Ouyang Miao stood with a faint smile on his face as he stared at Xiao Qua, who had an ugly expression on his face. Although the person in front of him was an elder of the Xiao clan and was in charge of an area, Ouyang Miao was not afraid of him. He was the heir of the Ouyang clan and the junior clan leader. Even if Xiao Qua was angry in his heart, what could he do to him? Xiao Yan by the side involuntarily laughed out loud at this tactic when he saw this. The resentment that he had suffered in his heart earlier had also disappeared at this moment. Giving someone a taste of their own medicine when facing someone like Zhao Jin could be said to be the best method. If one were to become angry because of the other party's deliberate provocation, it would instead be playing right into the other party's hands. The expressions of the people below the stage were interesting. On the auction stage, Xiao Qua was no longer calm. He clenched his teeth and repeated Ouyang Miao's words. While everyone was waiting for the next round of bidding, Xiao Qua's cold and stern gaze was thrown toward Zhao Jin. The impatience that filled his eyes was not hidden at all. Zhao Jin did not even suspect that if he hesitated even a little, this old man would really disregard everything and directly auction off the dou technique in his hand. Zhao Jin did not dare to hesitate any longer as he quietly thought that he had miscalculated in his heart. He hurriedly shouted out loud, "I bid 400. 500. Ouyang Miao's face was smiling as he quickly followed and said faintly. This time around, Zhao Jin frowned and began to hesitate. The other party's bid had already exceeded his expectations. If he were to continue increasing the bid, it was likely that even if he obtained this dou technique, his Zhao clan would have to pay quite a hefty price. Zhao Jin hesitated in his heart and the muscles on his face involuntarily twitched. Zhao Mingjia by the side was unknowingly urging him to increase the bid. This caused him to become even more irritated. Suddenly, Zhao Jin clenched his teeth and looked toward the private room opposite him. When he thought of Ouyang Miao and Xiao Yan, who were currently calling out bids, a savage smile gradually surfaced on his face. Xiao Yan, not only do I want to obtain this dou technique, I also want to use you to get back double the spirit stones that I have lost today. At this moment, everyone present was stunned. Even Zhao Jin, who had just returned to his chair, could not help but abruptly jump to his feet. The chair under him was shattered by the violently churning Genesis chi in his body, and his emotions suddenly went out of control. Damn it! That little bastard! How dare he go against my Zhao clan time and time again? How abominable! Zhao Jin angrily waved his sleeve, blasting apart the row of chairs in front of him, turning them into dust. Then, he stared at the box opposite him with a face full of killing intent. In the end, he could no longer hold back his anger and roared. I bid 1,000. Chapter 14:22. The moon was like a silver plate, and the sky was filled with stars. By the time Xiao Yan and his group left the auction house, more than a few hours had passed. Shuyang City, which was bustling during the day, was a little empty at this time. Even so, many lights could still be seen in the city, and some streets were still bustling as usual. Xiao Yan stood under the cunning moonlight, looking at the countless stars above his head, and hesitated for a long time. He did not expect that even with the joint efforts of Ouyang Miao and the Anan clan, the 1,000 ceiling ruler would still fall into Zhao Jin's hands. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones was indeed a terrifying number. Are you still thinking about what happened just now? Ouyang Miao walked up from behind and patted Xiao Yan's shoulder to comfort him. The latter shook his head and smiled bitterly. What could he do now? The 1,000 ceiling ruler was already in Zhao Jin's pocket. He could not snatch it away. Even if he wanted to, he did not have the strength to do so. Why don't we go and intercept him? We have more people, and with Fan Jian, we might be able to snatch it away. Ouyang Miao's eyes flashed as he stared at Xiao Yan. Fan Jian raised his eyebrows and looked at Ouyang Miao with a strange expression. Xiao Yan shook his head and said, This is my own business. Even if I want to take action, I should be the one to do it. Besides, you are from the Ouyang clan. If you take action against Zhao Jin here, the situation will be disadvantageous to you. Let's not do it. What should we do now? Ouyang Miao nodded slightly, and then said softly, "Let's go back. There is no need to stay here any longer. Brother Ouyang, are you willing to go to the Xiao clan with me?" Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment, and then looked at Ouyang Miao. Ouyang Miao was slightly stunned. He paused for a moment, and then shook his head and laughed. "I think it's better to forget about it. The three major clans have their own conflicts. Even with you leading the way, the elders of the Xiao clan will never allow me to enter the Xiao clan. Moreover, this will only bring you trouble. Since you are going back to the clan, I should return as well. If there's a chance, let's meet again." Saying this, Xiao Yan cupped his fists towards Xiao Yan and the others in front of him. Xiao Yan and the others smiled back. Then, under the moonlight, the two turned around and walked towards the other end of the street. When the two had walked for nearly 100 feet, Xiao Yan suddenly shouted from behind. "Brother Ouyang, what you said before was also a test. If I asked you to attack me for my own selfish desires, how would you treat me?" In the distance, Ouyang Miao's figure suddenly stopped and turned around. No one could see his face at this moment. "Brother Xiao, you only need to remember that from today onwards, you and I are as close as brothers. If the Xiao clan is unable to keep you, I will not go back on my words." Ouyang Miao ceased hesitating after his words sounded. He moved his body and swiftly disappeared from the end of the street with Fan Jian beside him. Xiao Yan stood quietly in the same spot. And Nan by his side was stunned at this moment. Anyone with eyes would be able to understand the meaning behind Ouyang Miao's words. He did not expect that the person in front of him was someone who even the Ouyang clan thought so highly of. Today's trip could be said to have been worth it. After sending off Ouyang Miao, Xiao Yan's group quickly parted ways with the Yan clan. Although the latter wanted to invite Xiao Yan to their residence as a guest, Xiao Yan knew that Xiao Xian was definitely still waiting for news from them. Hence, he rejected the invitation. When the three of them arrived at the arched door in front of the Xiao clan, they unexpectedly met Xiao Tian, who had also rushed back. When the two of them met, their expressions were naturally ugly. However, just as Xiao Tian took a step into the arched door, his voice was unhurriedly transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears. "I advise you to be mentally prepared." Xiao Yan and Bai Hua looked at each other when they heard this. They frowned in surprise, but did not think any further. They quickly passed through the arched door and hurried back to their residence. When the few of them returned to the pavilion, Xiao Xian was indeed still waiting for them in the hall. Xiao Xian immediately revealed a smile when he saw Xiao Yan's group return. He stood up and welcomed them. "How was the result?" "It can be considered smooth." Xiao Yan smiled. After the few of them had taken their seats, he roughly explained everything that had happened during the day. Xiao Xian nodded repeatedly when he heard this. Although it was not difficult for him to hear some danger from Xiao Yan's words, it was fortunate that they had returned safely and successfully. They had even brought back the Meru grass. This caused him to feel extremely joyous in his heart. "Haha, it's good that everything is fine. It is unexpected that the God Seal skill that shook the Gu clan back then would actually reappear on this continent. Moreover, its strength is even greater than before. It is also a great blessing for you to be able to obtain it. You must hold on to it properly. As for that Do technique, there are always gains and losses in everything. Since you are unable to obtain it, just let it be. There is no need to mind it." Xiao Xian placed the teacup in his hand down and smiled as he spoke. Xiao Yan nodded. After which, he mentioned that he had met the Yunin Pavilion in Shuyang City. Even until now, he still did not understand why the Yunin Pavilion was able to have a place under the rule of the Xiao clan if the Ouyang clan, which was also one of the three great clans, was so cautious when it came to ordinary visitors. The Yunin Pavilion is a clan faction that was established by the Heavenly Cloud Villa. Given the position of the Heavenly Cloud Villa on the continent, under normal circumstances, the Xiao clan would definitely not allow them to place a faction under their rule. However, you should also know that the Heavenly Cloud Villa possesses the richest formation master resources in the entire continent. Regardless of whether it is an array disc, related ancient scrolls, or even some unique secret techniques, as long as they have these things as the price, there will naturally be no one who will stop them. On the contrary, the Yunin Pavilion's faction will be protected by the Xiao clan to a certain extent. Even the Zhao clan that you met today would not be able to easily touch them. Xiao Yan came to a sudden understanding when he heard this. Xiao Xian smiled and continued. This does not only include the Yunyin Pavilion but also some other factions. If they wish to take root in the territory of the Shao clan, they must pay a corresponding price. Moreover, this is not only limited to the Shao clan. The 3 great clans, the 2 great sects, and even the Pill Tower will do the same. Their goal is to absorb the advantages of other factions and continuously strengthen themselves in order to maintain their superior position. As for other things, you will have to discover and experience them yourself. Xiao Yan could not help but inhale a deep breath after hearing this. Although he had once established a faction on the Douqi continent, he had never come into contact with such matters. Now that he heard Xiao Xian's words, he finally understood that there were actually so many complicated relationships between these so-called superfactions. Chapter 1423. The night sky was like a black curtain that enveloped the entire Shao clan. The bright moonlight shone through the thin layer of clouds, making the city seem as bright as day. Xiao Yan was seated on his bed with his eyes closed in his room. Moonlight shone into the room from outside the window, spreading out and lighting up the room. A substance-like energy lingered around Xiao Yan's nose. After which, it followed his breathing and entered his body. After a couple of refinements, it finally turned into waves of pure Genesis Qi that flowed into the vortex space. A long while later, Xiao Yan's tightly shut eyes were slowly opened. He sensed the muscles all over his body emitting waves of joy due to the abundant strength. He could not help but smile. Although he had experienced an entire day of being outside, the current him did not have the slightest intention of being tired. On the contrary, after this short training, his entire spirit had become even more abundant. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air. He flipped his palm and a jade box immediately appeared in his hand. He opened it and a mottled medicinal pill was quietly lying within. This medicinal pill was naturally the greatest gain he had obtained from the auction today, the Tier 8 Creation Pill. Although this pill was a failed product, judging from its appearance, this pill still maintained its original form. Even a portion of its medicinal power was still intact. As long as he could sort it out, he believed that with his current methods, it would not be difficult to restore the Pill of Fortune's formula. He gently lifted his hand and aimed his palm at the medicinal pill. With a gentle shake, a suction force gushed out. Soon after, he threw the Revival Fate pill into the air. With a thought, the majestic spiritual strength between his eyebrows immediately gushed out. It transformed into many thin, invisible threads that slowly approached the medicinal pill in front of him. To understand its mechanism, he naturally had to delve deep into the pill. Although doing so would affect the pill, there was naturally no need to worry since it was a damaged pill. This, however, just as Xiao Yan controlled his spirit force to slowly approach the creation pill, he suddenly discovered that there were several tiny holes on the pill's surface that were nearly invisible to the naked eye. It was obvious that someone had already probed the insides of the pill before him. Realizing this point, Xiao Yan immediately frowned. Since someone had already bid for this medicinal pill, the most likely result of choosing to auction it was that that person did not obtain any valuable information from it. Putting it this way, this creation pill did not have any value. With this thought in mind, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly sank. The spirit force that was slowly approaching the pill involuntarily paused. Since he already knew that he would not be able to obtain any results, was there any need to continue probing? But if, just as he was about to give up, Xiao Yan immediately felt a wave of unwillingness in his heart when he thought of the 7 level 7 pills that he had paid for this pill. Although the previous owner of this creation pill had already tried, the former spirit force was not as good as his. Even if that was the case, it was not impossible for him to find out what the other person had failed to discover. Even if he could not obtain any conclusions in the end, he still had to give it a try. After making up his mind, Xiao Yan once again relaxed. He took a deep breath, held his breath and concentrated. Once again, he controlled a few strands of spirit force and slowly made contact with the surface of the creation pill. The thin strands of spirit force approached the surface of the pill at an extremely slow speed. Then, they gently caressed the surface of the pill. Like an earthworm, they slowly climbed along the surface of the pill until they reached a certain spot. Xiao Yan felt that the medicinal power there was more concentrated. Only then did he control the strands of spirit force and carefully insert them into the pill. Under Xiao Yan's intentional control, the entire process was extremely slow. Other than being worried that he would not obtain the results he wanted, Xiao Yan was also afraid that the slightest movement would affect the unstable medicinal power of the pill itself. Once the remaining medicinal power was also affected, all of his efforts would be in vain. Time flowed by bit by bit. The expression on Xiao Yan's face gradually became solemn without him realizing it. The spiritual strength that had infiltrated into the medicinal pill had finally come into contact with the core of the medicinal pill. The final result was about to surface. Inside the room, the air was silent. A huge amount of spirit force revolved around Xiao Yan's body. Both of his eyes stared at the pill in front of him. Just a little bit more and success or failure would be within reach. After dozens of breaths, Xiao Yan, whose eyes were wide open, suddenly raised his head. His eyes were tightly shut and his teeth were tightly clenched. His face was filled with disappointment. Sigh. Even though he was extremely careful, the final result of his investigation of this medicinal pill was just as he had expected. The medicinal properties within it were a mess, and the medicinal strength was weak. It was impossible to separate and sort it out. Now, this medicinal pill could truly be considered as a worthless waste pill. Thinking back to everything that happened in the auction house today, even the most valuable pill, the creation pill, had left him disappointed. At this moment, it seemed that today's trip was really not very fruitful. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. Soon after, Bai Hua's voice sounded in the room. Xiao Yan greeted her and the latter pushed open the door and entered. Seeing Xiao Yan's disappointed expression, Bai Hua did not seem to be surprised. She only smiled and went forward to ask, "What was the result?" Xiao Yan shook his head and casually waved the pill in his hand. He helplessly said, "It has no value at all. Throughout the entire process, the only thing I discovered was that the person who concocted this medicinal pill had originally intended to concoct it to the level of a 9th-rank medicinal pill. However, an accident happened midway and destroyed the medicinal pill. Other than that, I gained nothing." Bai Hua extended her hand and Xiao Yan casually threw it over. The latter caught it and held the pill in her palm. She closed her eyes and with a thought, a strange milky white energy flowed along her arm and gathered in her palm. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's disappointed face could not help but reveal a hopeful expression. He had almost forgotten that Bai Hua's original body was a pill. Compared to him, this creation pill could be considered to be of the same race. The latter's understanding of pills was naturally better than his. However, after a long while, Bai Hua opened her mouth again. The words she spat out caused Xiao Yan to instantly feel discouraged. That's right. The medicinal strength is thin and the medicinal properties are in a mess. This is indeed an incomplete pill. Bai Hua smiled. Xiao Yan was immediately speechless. The result was already known. Why should she go through so much trouble to test it again? However, immediately after, Bai Hua continued, "Although the medicinal properties of the pill itself are in a mess, fortunately, its essence has not changed. The creation pill is still the creation pill. There's a way." Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "I don't dare to say that it will be restored to its original state. However, it can dissolve the medicinal properties of the pill itself and allow it to have a certain effect of the creation pill." Hearing this, Xiao Yan's eyes immediately shot out a bright light. He stared at Bai Hua with a fervent gaze and said with a slightly excited smile, "That's enough. Even if it's not a complete pill, as long as we can analyze its medicinal properties and restore the pill formula, it won't be a difficult matter." After speaking, Bai Hua extended a finger and drew a line with her thumb. A drop of dark red blood with a tinge of gold shot out. Under Bai Hua's control, it landed on the surface of the creation pill. After which, it followed the small holes on the surface and gradually merged into the pill. Under Xiao Yan's hopeful gaze, in a short few breaths, the drop of blood had completely merged into the pill. Immediately after, a rich pill fragrance suddenly spread out from the pill and formed a layer of mist. It even faintly showed signs of taking shape. It's done. Xiao Yan's heart was filled with joy. Indeed, he could feel that the medicinal strength within the pill was rapidly increasing. The extremely messy medicinal properties within were also gradually separating. In fact, there was an astonishing energy that was rapidly increasing within the pill. So much so that the surface of the pill actually started to squirm in a frightening and strange manner. Chapter 1424. In the room shrouded in moonlight, Xiao Yan stared at the spinning pill in front of him in pleasant surprise. As he sensed the gradually dense medicinal effects, the smile on his face could not help but widen. Bai Hua also stared at the pill in front of her with narrowed eyes. She faintly sensed that something was wrong. Be careful. The energy within the pill is rapidly increasing. Something is wrong. Xiao Yan reminded in a deep voice. Only then did he suddenly notice that although the medicinal pill in front of him had indeed recovered quite a lot of its medicinal strength and the medicinal properties within it had basically been neutralized, the strength agglomerated within it was still wildly growing at this moment. The surface of the medicinal pill had also begun to wiggle in an unusual manner. Suddenly, the energy of the world around the two of them began to tremble uncontrollably. Waves of energy rapidly condensed, turning into a few pillars of energy that were devoured by the pill in front of them. At that moment, the situation in the room had completely changed. What's going on? Their expressions changed. They looked at each other and retreated decisively. Soon after, they cautiously stared at the pill that was rapidly expanding under the influence of the energy of the world. Their faces gradually turned grave. On the other side, Xiao Xian, who was seated with his eyes shut, was also woken up by this sudden commotion. He frowned slightly as he glanced at Xiao Yan's room. His body flashed and appeared in the room. A surprised expression involuntarily surfaced on his face when he saw the situation in front of him. What is this? The nature pill. I never thought that it would turn out like this. Xiao Yan knit his brows tightly. The gazes of the three of them looked at the medicinal pill in the arena. At this moment, the latter was wildly gathering the natural energy. A powerful energy storm was gathering within this narrow space. Wave after wave of frightening energy waves repeatedly spread in all directions. The bed, along with everything around it, was shattered. The energy aura in the middle of the storm continued to rise wildly until it transformed into a long roar that shot to the sky at a certain moment. Xiao Yan's expression changed. Ha! A hoarse shout suddenly rang out like an ear-piercing ghost howl. Invisible sound waves instantly swept out, turning into an invisible gust of wind that shot out in all directions. Xiao Yan and the other two immediately released their majestic auras without hesitation, blocking the gust of wind. As the wind dispersed, the gazes of the three people once again converged on the medicinal pill. Their expressions immediately changed. At that moment, the creation pill had already transformed into a human form. However, compared to the transformation of an ordinary medicinal pill, the latter's body was abnormally distorted. The skin all over his body looked as if it was twisted into a ball. Only half of his face was normal, while the other half was like a magical beast. His scarlet eyes revealed a wild expression. Compared to his human form, the current him was more like a human-shaped magical beast. Its scarlet eyes slowly fell on Xiao Yan and the other two people in front of it. With a sweep of its gaze, it locked onto Bai Hua, who was among the three people. This human being of the same clan as it. It seemed to become its first prey. Roar! The monster let out a low roar. Its hands, which were wider than an ordinary person's, suddenly clenched into fists. Its body shook and the space around it immediately shattered. In the next instant, its figure suddenly appeared in front of Bai Hua. It raised its arm high and punched at the latter. The overbearing fist brought along an intense gust of wind. In addition to the majestic energy that covered it, the power of this punch caused the space to instantly collapse. Everywhere it passed, a distorted concave arc appeared in the already collapsed space. The power of this punch could be said to be terrifying. Clang! Immediately after, just as the monster's punch was about to land on Bai Hua's body, a black figure suddenly flashed in front of her. It used its hard steel body to block the monster's punch. Bang! In the instant that Bai Hua's figure flashed, the black shadow in front of her was abruptly sent flying. Its body destroyed a small portion of the loft before heavily smashing into the courtyard. A huge crater immediately appeared. Bai Hua focused her gaze and saw that the black figure was the North King. At this moment, after the North King took the monster's heavy punch, a few inches deep dent appeared on his indestructible body. His entire chest was almost stuck to his back. Even his sturdy back was bulging. A huge crack appeared on his body, almost tearing it apart. What a terrifying power! Bai Hua was secretly shocked. If he had been the one to receive that punch, she would have lost her life on the spot. Back off! At this moment, Xiao Yan's shout suddenly rang out. Bai Hua immediately returned to her senses. When she lifted her head, the monster's scarlet eyes swept over her once again. It raised its head and roared angrily. Its body shook and the energy in its body raged. The already shattered loft shook even more. Bai Hua quickly retreated and glanced at Xiaoyan. At this moment, the latter raised both of his hands. His 10 fingers linked together and a set of complicated seals was quickly formed. A ball of flame quickly revolved in the air in front of him. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a ring of fire. At the same time, a ring of fire instantly condensed around the monster's body. Melting pill ring. Bai Hua's eyes narrowed. The monster once again charged towards her angrily. While she was shocked, the monster had already appeared in front of her. With her current strength, it would be difficult for her to block it. In the next instant, Xiaoyan on the other side suddenly let out an explosive cry just as the monster's fist was about to smash down. The fire ring that was surrounding the monster's body was immediately withdrawn. The fist that was smashing down heavily also suddenly stilled at this moment. Buzz! An invisible shockwave spread out, and half of the pavilion completely collapsed. Fortunately, Lian Er's place was unscathed. That girl should still be asleep at this moment. Retract. Xiaoyan clenched his teeth. Boundless spiritual strength controlled the ring of fire and gradually compressed it. At the same time, the monster's huge body gradually trembled and retracted as the ring of fire shrank. After a dozen breaths, it returned to its original state. By the side of the medicinal pill, Bai Hua recovered with her body covered in cold sweat. She let out a long sigh of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She glanced at Xiaoyan, smiled bitterly and lifted her leg to walk forward. However, in the next instant, Xiaoyan, who was about to keep the pill, suddenly had a drastic change in expression. Careful! The pill melting ring that had condensed on the surface of the medicinal pill suddenly exploded at the same time. The surging energy that had been forcefully suppressed within it also suddenly exploded at this moment. Bai Hua, who was the closest to it, was the first to bear the brunt of it. This wave of energy did not hold back at all as it heavily slammed into her body. Her entire body was instantly sent flying. Like the Northern King, she crashed into the ground and was buried deep within. Her aura also instantly dropped to its lowest point. The body of the monster once again agglomerated in the original spot. After the surging energy was condensed, the aura of its body also seemed to have become even stronger. The thing that caused Xiaoyan to be even more shocked was that the transforming pill ring, which was formed from the heavenly flame and used to suppress the medicinal pill, had completely shattered at this moment. The flame on it actually adhered to the surface of the monster's body. Not only did it not have any burning effect, but it actually merged with the monster's body and became a part of it. An astonishing change occurred once again. Chapter 1425. Roar! In the air, the monster that was formed from the revival pill let out a furious roar. The flame that covered its body also soared. Its body suddenly shook and waves of colorful majestic energy immediately gushed out from its body. With a wave of its large hand, an enormous energy light pillar suddenly shot out and shot towards Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's expression changed slightly when he saw this. He clenched his hand in the air, and the pitch-black heavy buster sword immediately appeared. He suddenly swung it, and a beam of light immediately shot out, blocking the beam of energy that shot towards him. In the next moment, the monster's body suddenly flashed and appeared in front of Xiaoyan. Its large hand grasped the body of the buster sword, while its other hand clenched into a fist and punched towards Xiaoyan's head. The revival pill ring from before seemed to have made the monster rather concerned. Its target was Xiaoyan, and the murderous intent in its scarlet eyes was self-evident. Chi! Just as the monster's fist was about to land, Xiaoyan, who was beside Xiaoyan, put 2 fingers together and swung his sword. An incomparably sharp sword chi immediately shot out from the invisible space. The wind moved with the wind and turned into a sword. With astonishing momentum, it severed the monster's wrist in a single strike, and the fist that was about to land heavily shattered in an instant. At the same time, Xiaoyan took advantage of the opportunity to attack. The heavy buster sword heavily pressed down, landing on the monster's shoulder. As he twisted his body, he viciously kicked the monster's chest, forcing it to retreat. Xiaoyan and Xiaoxian swiftly exchanged glances with each other after defeating the monster. They could see a grave expression in each other's eyes. From the looks of the current situation, the strength of this monster was likely comparable to a high-tier swordsong expert. Regardless of whether it was in terms of speed or strength, it was not inferior to them. If they were careless and underestimated the enemy, they would inevitably suffer a serious injury. Teske. Soon after the monster's hand, which had been cut off by Xianxia, began to swiftly recover at a speed visible to the naked eye under the urging of waves of enormous energy in front of Xiaoyan's duo's shocked eyes. The bloodthirsty killing intent within its pair of scarlet eyes had also become denser. Roar! A deafening roar rang out once again. Xiaoyan took a deep breath as his gaze quickly swept across the huge pit below. After confirming that Bai Hua was fine for the time being, with a thought, the Northern King's body burst out once again, flying into the air. The three of them faced the monster at the same time. At this moment, the Northern King was relying on the power of lightning within its body. Although most of the wounds and depressions on its body had healed, a large number of shocking injuries could still be seen. Just a punch was enough to injure the Northern King to such an extent. This monster's strength was truly terrifying. Xiaoyan even Xiao Xianxiao's face. Although he was not afraid of this bastard, there was nothing they could do if this continued. Moreover, they were currently in the Xiao clan. Once this bastard left the vicinity of this courtyard, it would cause a commotion within the Xiao clan. At that time, the faction led by Xiao Jinghong and the rest would definitely use this as an excuse to pester them. At that time, even with the clan leader and first elder backing them, they would not be able to protect them. It is not that we are unable to deal with him. However, the energy within his body is far too great. In order for the pill transformation ring to completely control him, we must first suppress his intelligence. However, before that, we must first suppress his strength. Otherwise, we will not be able to control him. Xiaoyan shook his head when he heard this. The strength of this monster in front of him might be extraordinary, but from the way he saw it, it was ultimately a medicinal pill that had failed to be refined. Although it had undergone a mutation because of his actions today, the transforming pill ring still possessed a suppressive effect on it. This was something that could be seen from how he had successfully refined it into a medicinal pill earlier. The most troublesome thing was that the strength contained within this beast's body was far too great. Given Xiaoyan's current strength, he was unable to successfully subdue it within a short period of time by relying on the transforming pill ring. The only way was to use a violent method to forcefully suppress it until the transforming pill ring completely subdued its body. It was because of this that Xiaoyan had once again summoned the seriously injured Northern King. Since that is the case, you will temporarily stall him. I will suppress him later, and you will use the pill transformation ring to subdue his body. There was no time to think. Xiaoxian quickly instructed. Then, he flipped his palm and took out a few array discs from his storage ring. With a wave of his sleeve, several streams of light shot out and were arranged in various parts of the airspace. They completely sealed off the area where the three people and the monster were. With a thought, several dazzling golden lights instantly shot out from the array discs, and golden runes immediately spread out. The expression on Xiaoyan's face was slightly startled when he saw this skill. Soon after, he involuntarily let out a long sigh of relief. A smile surfaced on his face. He had nearly forgotten that this ancestor of his was a true formation master. With such a skill, it was likely not difficult to suppress this beast. Xiaoyan smiled confidently as he glanced at the Northern King. Soon after, he cast his gaze towards the monster at the center of the formation and laughed. Next, let me deal with you. Northern King, let's go. Xiaoyan's body moved. At the same time that the cry from his mouth sounded, an ice-cold cry was emitted from the throat of the Northern King. The two figures immediately turned into rays of light that swiftly charged toward the monster. Roar! A low roar suddenly resounded through the void. The monster seemed to have noticed the situation on the field. Its scarlet eyes uneasily swept across the array discs in the field. Its body shook violently, and its arms waved in unison. Its hands instantly squirmed strangely, and in the blink of an eye, they condensed into two slender sharp blades like awls. Its wide feet stomped heavily on the void, and its body shot out explosively. It waved its arms and slashed towards Xiaoyan, who was charging towards it. Clang! Xiaoyan raised the huge ruler high above his head, and then smashed it down heavily. Under the cover of the heavenly flame, the power of this blow was even more astonishing. However, the monster was not afraid at all. It waved its right arm and fiercely collided with the huge ruler. When the two collided, sparks flew. The huge ruler left a shallow dent on the cold awl. At the same time, the monster blocked the incomparably heavy ruler, and its other arm pierced forward, aiming straight for Xiaoyan's chest. Humph! Seeing this, Xiaoyan's face turned cold. He let out a cold snort, and a golden light immediately enveloped his body. His left hand quickly released the dark heavy ruler, and he clenched it tightly into a fist. Under the golden light, his body rapidly expanded, and the power that covered his left fist also rapidly increased. With Xiaoyan's current cultivation, he used the giant elephant technique again in the blink of an eye. This power was even greater than before. Bang! A punch was thrown. Not only did the huge fist explode the monster's left arm, even the remaining power smashed onto the monster's body. With this punch, it was violently sent flying. After the golden body disappeared, Xiaoyan looked at his completely red left hand, and the muscles at the corner of his eyes involuntarily twitched. The monster's body could be said to be extremely tough. With this punch, not only his palm, but even his entire arm felt numb. On the contrary, looking at that fellow, after receiving a complete punch from Xiaoyan, other than one of his arms being destroyed, his entire body appeared to be a little deformed compared to before. However, the thing that caused the most worry was that his left arm, which had been blasted apart, had actually once again grown out at this moment. As expected, as long as this bastard has enough energy, its destroyed body will continue to grow out. Seeing this scene, even with Xiaoyan's temperament, he could not help but feel a headache. This bastard was indeed frighteningly strong. If he was unable to completely suppress it, it was likely that it would become increasingly difficult to control in the future. He glanced at the eastern horizon, where the land was gradually turning white. The stars that filled the sky had already quietly disappeared. Once the sun had completely risen, the scene here would be unreservedly displayed under the light of day. At that time, they would no longer have the opportunity to refute. Chapter 1426. We can't go on like this. Xiaoyan's gaze swiftly swept over the formation that was still being formed around him. He knit his brows tightly and clenched his teeth. Currently, Xiaoxian's formation had yet to be formed, but there was not much time left. Additionally, this beast had a shocking recovery ability. If this continued, it would require a large amount of time to suppress this beast even if the formation was formed. It was likely that it would be too late. Just as this thought was lingering in Xiaoyan's heart, the monster on the other side once again let out a roar. Its left arm, which had been destroyed a moment ago, had actually recovered at this moment. It twisted its body and emitted a wave of sharp roars toward the spot where Xiaoyan was. Immediately, its entire body charged forward, appearing just like a rhinoceros as it violently charged toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's expression grew increasingly grave as he stared intently at the charging monster. It was only when the distance between them was less than 10 feet that Xiaoyan finally made up his mind. With a wave of his hand, the North King's figure immediately charged forward. He tightly grasped the heavy Xian ruler with both hands, and with a thought, raging flames instantly enveloped it. Since I can't destroy you, I'll make sure you have no chance to recover. Torrential Genesis Chi continuously converged on the giant ruler, and a terrifying aura gradually spread from it. In the night, several gazes looked towards Xiaoyan. When they sensed the astonishing power contained within the giant ruler, astonishment involuntarily flashed across their eyes. 7-layer heaven-breaking ruler. Xiaoyan slowly spat out these words, and a trembling sound echoed across the world. It was as if the world itself was resonating with his words. The light of the array beneath his feet grew brighter and brighter. The surrounding pillars of light connected with each other and converged above the center of the array to form an even more complicated and huge rune. A terrifying and prosperous pressure gradually spread out. As the formation was about to be completed, the battle abruptly began. Boom! After a couple of exchanges, the Northern King's tough body was finally violently sent flying by this monster. This time around, the Northern King did not step forward. At the same time, the enormous ruler in Xiaoyan's hand, which was covered by a fierce flame, was suddenly swung. One ruler. The majestic ruler that seemed to want to split the heavens and the earth lay in between. Wherever it passed, the formless void collapsed. The light of the blazing flames lit up this part of the world. Dozens of eyes in the darkness in the distance also reflected a blazing light. Roar! The monster let out a furious roar. Both of its hands clenched together and strangely merged into one, forming a strangely shaped black broadsword. Surging energy gathered on it, and its powerful aura caused the space to tremble. Soon after, it slashed down with all its might, pouring down in torrents as if it could split the heavens and split the earth. Soon after, it collided violently with the shocking ruler. Bzz. A trembling sound rang out, and the dazzling light disappeared in the blink of an eye. The collision on the field only lasted for an instant, and in the next moment, it turned into an earth-shattering wave of energy. With the point of collision as the center, it violently swept out. Formation activate. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly let out a stern cry. Golden light suddenly appeared around the formation, and many golden light pillars connected with each other. A solid formation barrier was formed in the blink of an eye, blocking all the energy that was sweeping out. At the same time, the formation above the monster's head finally released an enormous golden light pillar under Xianxia's control. It enveloped the monster and sealed its surroundings. An extremely terrifying pressure also landed on the monster's head. With the suppression of this force, the beast's strength was reduced by more than half. Xiaoyan, it's up to you. Xiaoyan shouted at Xiaoyan. The latter nodded heavily, and his body moved. He held the giant ruler and entered the circular light formation. Next, as long as Xiaoyan could completely suppress the beast's strength and use the pill transforming ring, he would be able to completely control the beast's body. Huff! Xiaoyan, who was in the formation, slowly exhaled. He lifted his eyes and stared at the roaring monster. Holding the giant ruler, his footsteps changed, and he instantly used the sky extinction step. His body appeared in front of the monster in the blink of an eye, and he waved the giant ruler in his hand with all his might, wildly bombarding the latter's body. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet. Break! A deep roar was emitted from Xiaoyan's throat. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his palms, which were tightly holding the giant ruler, were completely red. When the 7th ruler was swung, the shocking ruler glow not only broke the strange large blade, but also penetrated the monster's body. Bang! Even so, the latter still used his body to violently slam into Xiaoyan's chest. A mouthful of blood was immediately spat out. Xiaoyan's expression instantly turned pale. Without much hesitation, he saw the latter's severed arms grow once again as his body rapidly retreated. Without any hesitation, the Genesis Qi in Xiaoyan's body crazily surged out without any reservation. His retreating footsteps violently stepped on empty air, forcefully stabilizing his body. With a flip of his hand, he swung out a ruler. Flame-devouring wave. As the ruler glow flashed past, new wounds were added to the monster's wounds that had yet to heal, and it let out a painful howl. Xiaoyan didn't hold back at all. Holding the giant ruler in his hand, he endured the pain in his body and continuously swung the giant ruler in his hand. Flame-devouring wave. Flame-devouring wave. Flame-devouring wave. In an instant, Xiaoyan had executed 100 moves in a row. Every swing of the ruler accurately landed on the monster's wounds, giving it no chance to recover. Until a certain moment. Qi! An astonishing energy beam suddenly shot out from the monster's mouth, destroying the ruler glow in one fell swoop, and then charged towards Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's expression changed drastically when he saw this scene. It was unexpected that this beast still had the ability to retaliate at this moment. His body swiftly withdrew as the light pillar shot out and penetrated the light pillar that covered the two of them. It ruthlessly penetrated a formation plate at a certain spot in front of Xiaoyan's and Xiaoxian's shocked eyes. Not good. With the formation disc destroyed, the terrifying pressure shrouding the monster's head was reduced by more than half, and its power immediately surged out again. The situation on the battlefield suddenly changed again. Roar! A furious roar suddenly sounded. A frightening energy once again surged out of the monster's body. From the distant horizon, a ray of morning sunlight shot over and shone on Xiaoyan's face, causing his heart to feel an icy cold chill. As expected, it's still too late. Xiaoyan indifferently said as he looked at the monster that was about to erupt again. However, in the next moment, Qi! A piercing sound rang out, and Bai Hua, who was in an extremely sorry state, once again charged into the sky. Under the surprised gazes of Xiaoyan and Xiaoyan, she fiercely hugged the monster's body, and a low roar with all her might immediately entered Xiaoyan's ears. Quick transforming pill ring. Bai Hua! This scene that had suddenly appeared in the battleground also caused Xiaoyan to instantly raise all of his attention. His face was anxious as he stared at Bai Hua, who was currently tightly hugging the monster. He had never expected that Bai Hua would actually suddenly charge out at this moment. Quick! I can't imprison him for long. You must subdue him before that happens. With a desperate roar, a milky white glow suddenly gushed out from Bai Hua's body. At this moment, all the remaining energy in her body gushed out without any reservation, forming a large net that tightly bound the monster together. No matter how the monster struggled, it was unable to move at all. Bai Hua. Xiaoyan's face was dull, and his mind was completely blank. He had already lost the little fairy doctor, and now that he encountered such a situation, he did not know what to do. Bai Hua had risked her life to suppress the monster, so that it could stay in the Xiao clan. However, compared to the latter, Xiao Yan was more concerned about Bai Hua. Buzz buzz buzz. Within the light array, the space distorted, and several invisible swords formed one after another, revolving around the monster's body. The sword aura that permeated from the swords continuously suppressed the terrifying energy that surged out from the monster's body. Xiao Xian's helpless voice was subsequently transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears. Xiao Yan, make your move. You should also understand that he will not let go unless he dies. You can't let his efforts go in vain. Huff! Xiao Yan's body trembled as he exhaled. Both of his eyes involuntarily turned red. He lifted his gaze and exchanged glances with Bai Hua, whose face was becoming increasingly pale. After which, he slowly closed his eyes, raised both of his hands and once again formed the same seal as before. The transforming pill ring subsequently appeared. Goodbye. Chapter 14:27. The golden light of the great array gradually disappeared in the sky above the ruins. A ring of raging flames transformed into a ring of fire in the dilapidated space. It gradually shrank under the support of an enormous spiritual strength. Mysterious light intertwined on two figures, one white and one black, within the ring of fire. They were kneaded into a ball. Hum hum hum. Waves of majestic energy churned unceasingly within the ball of light, attacking the outermost ring of fire in an attempt to break it. However, with Xiao Xian's intervention and Xiao Yan's all-out attack this time around, the energy was unable to escape regardless of how it struggled. After a couple of breaths, the two intertwining energies completely merged together. The enormous light cluster continued to shrink under the effect of the fire ring. Finally, it agglomerated into a strange medicinal pill that was the size of a dragon's eye and was half black and half white. The pill fell and was received into Xiao Yan's palm. A complicated expression surfaced on the latter's face. No one could have imagined that Bai Hua, who had been running around with him the day before, would end up in such a state at this moment. This unforeseen event was just like a bolt from the blue, making it difficult for anyone to accept. Fortunately, from the looks of the current situation of the pill, there seemed to be some leeway to turn things around. The pill transformation ring had gathered the two pills at the same time, forcefully merging them. The two medicinal effects within the pill would definitely merge into one after a long period of grinding. At that time, it would be the opportunity for Bai Hua's revival. As for what the outcome would be, it would all depend on the will of the heavens. The sun rose in the east. Resplendent light shone on Xiao Yan's face. At the same time, it also illuminated the ruins below, expelling all the darkness in this world. Xiao Yan blankly stared at everything in front of him. His eyes were dejected. Destruction, loss, injury. For a moment, various emotions surged in his heart. Many figures appeared in the distant pavilion. These fellows had already sensed the commotion here earlier. However, for some reason they did not intervene. Among them, there were those from the three great elders faction and also clan leader Xiao Yuheng's faction. However, regardless of which faction it was, they did not intervene. Xiao Yan's indifferent face slowly lifted when he sensed those gazes. His eyes were extremely cold as they swept across those figures. At this moment, these fellows no longer belonged to any faction to him. The so-called blood clan kinship was even more nonsense. Huff! Xiao Yan's body trembled as he exhaled. His body, which was standing in the air, suddenly relaxed and immediately fell down. Xiao Xian's expression changed slightly. Fortunately, Xiao Yan's body suddenly twisted the moment before he landed. Only then did he stabilize his body. Subsequently, he crossed his legs on the ground. Without fearing the gazes of those people, he consumed a few pills and began to refine them on the spot. Even with Xiao Xian's mental fortitude, he could not help but sigh softly when he saw this. His gaze swept across the courtyard below, which had almost turned into ruins. He paused for a moment. The instant he lifted his head, A sharp glint suddenly shot out from his pitch-black eyes and swept across the crowd of spectators in the distant pavilion. At the same time, a hurricane swept across the land. Astonishing sword chi soared into the sky. The incomparably sharp glint immediately caused the hearts of those people to be alarmed. They hurriedly withdrew their gazes, and various figures swiftly withdrew. Although Xiao Xian's cultivation was inferior to Yuan Zong's, the incomparably sharp and domineering sword chi from his body was enough to cause their expressions to change. Additionally, he had previously revealed his identity as a formation master. At this moment, few of these fellows dared to look him in the eye. After all, if the former attacked in a rage, it was likely that they would not be able to obtain any benefits. Xiao Xian withdrew his gaze after forcing back those spectators. With a thought, the domineering sword chi that had gathered above his head quietly dispersed. He looked at Xiao Yan below, and after a moment of hesitation, he turned around and flew towards the top of a large tree not far away. He stood quietly and did not disturb the latter. Xiao Xian understood that Xiao Yan needed to be alone and calm at a time like this. Any slight external disturbance might not be able to calm him down, and might even have the opposite effect. Only in silence would his heart truly be calm, and his thoughts would gradually calm down. However, the thing that he did not expect was that this sitting of Xiao Yan's actually lasted for a couple of days. Clan leader Xiao Yuhing and another old man stood side by side in a pavilion in the distance. Their gazes pierced through countless gaps and directly witnessed everything that had happened. It was also because of these two that no one had intervened to stop the unforeseen event that occurred in the formation earlier. Haha, clan leader has concealed quite a lot. I did not expect Xiao Xian to actually be a rank 7 formation master. Such a status is not inferior to the three of us in the clan. Beside Xiao Yuhing, a slightly short and fat old man stroked his beard. A bright light flashed in his old eyes as he spoke with a smile. As the head of the cabinet, this old man's position in the clan could be said to be unreachable by many. Almost all matters of the clan had to go through his hands. However, he did not expect that Xiao Xian had been in the clan for a few years, but he did not notice the latter's status at all. Looking at Xiao Yuhing's calm expression, it was obvious that he had known about this long ago. Xiao Gan, I did not intend to conceal this matter. It is just that Xiao Xian's status is rather special, and we cannot allow people with ulterior motives to know too much. Xiao Yuhing frowned slightly and shook his head as he slowly spoke. Clan leader, what do you mean? I, Xiao Gan, was born for the great cause of the Xiao clan. For the clan, I can even give up my life. You actually say that I have ulterior motives. The moment these words were spoken, Xiao Gan's expression instantly changed. Anger immediately surfaced on his originally smiling old face. Just as he was about to fly into a rage, Xiao Yuhing spoke again. Xiao Gan, you have to know that this was not my intention. The clan is so big, and there will always be people with ulterior motives. In order to prevent others from spreading this matter, the fewer people who know about this matter, the better. Otherwise, it will definitely bring about a disaster. Xiao Yuhing clenched his teeth tightly, and his tone was rather solemn. He had already expected such a scene when Xiao Xian released the array disc earlier. Moreover, from now on, Xiao Xian's identity as a formation master could no longer be concealed. However, he did not know if anything else would happen during this period. Hearing this, Xiao Gan was slightly startled at first. After carefully thinking about the meaning behind his words, his old eyes instantly narrowed, and he could not help but exclaim, You mean this is old? Before his voice faded, Xiao Yuhing immediately gestured for him to keep quiet. He only nodded his head slightly. Under the latter's gaze, he slowly inhaled a breath of air and continued. Yesterday, I received news that the Northern Stone Clan was completely massacred overnight. All the members of the Stone Clan had their spiritual sources sucked dry and died in an abnormal manner. From now on, the Stone Clan no longer exists in this world. Hiss! Actually, even the Stone Clan is gone. The one who did this is the Ghost Gate? Xiao Gan's breathing suddenly paused, and shock involuntarily surged in his heart. A group of things that were neither human nor ghost immediately appeared in his mind. Based on his knowledge of the Ghost Gate, those fellows seemed to possess some special methods to harm spiritual strength. Now that such a thing had happened, the greatest possibility was naturally that they were the ones who did it. The Northern Stone Clan, also known as the Stone Clan, was a clan that had existed since ancient times. At its peak, It was comparable to the Shao clan of ancient times. However, as time passed, the Stone clan gradually withdrew from the stage of history and became what was now known as the Lost clan. There were many other ancient clans in the central region that were similar to the Stone clan. For example, the Gu clan, which was now one of the clans under the Ouyang clan, was once a lost clan of ancient times. It was only in order to protect the last bloodline of the clan that it submitted to others. It was not as unyielding as the Stone clan, but perhaps it was because of this that it ended up in its current state. Sigh. I don't know. It is impossible to determine who the culprit is just based on the scene of the Stone clan. However, we can confirm that the culprit is at least an 8-star source venerate. Otherwise, given the Stone clan's foundation, even if they were no match for the culprit, they would not have ended up in such a miserable state. Could it be a source saint? Xiao Gan's expression changed drastically when he heard Xiao Yuheng's words. It was a little too exaggerated for a declining clan to be attacked by a source saint expert. I can't be sure, but it should be close. I don't know when it will be my Xiao clan's turn if this continues. Xiao Yuheng shook his head with a complicated expression. He knew the seriousness of this matter. For many years, the lost clans of various sizes in the central region had been destroyed one after another, and no one had found any clues about the culprit. The rapid development of this matter had caused the 3 great clans to panic. According to everyone's deduction, the main suspect in this matter naturally fell on Ghoul's sect. The latter naturally did not care about this at all. They simply did not care about what the outside world thought of them. They still maintained their usual style, mercilessly slaughtering those opponents who intentionally provoked them. As time passed, the many factions in the middle region naturally did not dare to voice their anger towards the Ghost Gate. Everyone's subjective view of such matters naturally fell on the Ghost Gate. Chapter 1428. Following the unusual change of the medicinal pill back then, nearly 2 days had passed. During these 2 days, Xiao Yan's figure had been sitting cross-legged within the ruins with his eyes tightly shut. He appeared just like an old monk meditating. His aura had already completely recovered with the help of the medicinal pill. His face was completely calm and one could not see any abnormality. Xiao Xian was a little helpless in the face of this. All he could do was patiently wait for Xiao Yan to wake up. Before Xiao Yan woke up, the nearby area had been sealed with the help of a formation. No one was allowed to approach. Hence, even some of the busybodies within the Xiao clan could only bitterly withdraw their thoughts and observe the situation within the formation from a distance. Will he be all right? Lianer frowned at the top of the half-collapsed building within the formation. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry as she stared at Xiao Yan, who was seated with his eyes closed, in the ruins below. Her hand unconsciously grasped a strand of hair as she asked hesitantly. Xiao Xian slowly shook his head when he heard this. Given the current situation, no one can determine what is going on in his heart. We can only pray that he doesn't fall too deeply into it. Ever since the death of the little fairy doctor and now that Bai Hua was seriously injured, the few relatives and friends that Xiao Yan had on this foreign continent were currently leaving him one by one. The emotions that he had to bear during this process could be said to be incomparably heavy. It was impossible for him to be completely unconcerned. However, at the very least, Xiao Yan did not completely lose his reasoning even under such circumstances. Otherwise, the current situation would likely cause others to be even more worried. Lian Er's pretty eyes looked at the skinny figure below. The back of her teeth bit her lower red lip. Although she did not have a deep understanding of Xiao Yan, she had heard of many things from his teacher, the little fairy doctor. She was also clearly aware of the special relationship between the two of them, which was neither close nor distant. Now that the former was no longer around and Xiao Yan had once again encountered such an unexpected change, she naturally could not bear it. Go if you want to. It's good that someone is by his side. Don't disturb him. Xiao Xian gently smiled when he saw the young lady's wish. His hand gently rubbed the young lady's head as he softly reminded her. The young lady's heart immediately rejoiced when she heard this. Her eyes were filled with gratitude as she nodded at Xiao Xian. Her delicate body moved and leaped down from the top of the building. After which, her delicate body gently landed on a flat ground not far from Xiao Yan. Her gaze was a little nervous as she slowly approached Xiao Yan. When she arrived in front of him, she finally sighed in relief when she saw that the latter did not make any unusual movements. Boom! However, in the next instant, before Lian Er could do anything else, the enormous formation that enveloped the entire courtyard suddenly trembled violently. At the same time, the expressions of Xianxia and Lian Er, who were within the formation, changed. Their gazes landed on the origin of the sound in the blink of an eye. At the same time, a cracking sound was gradually emitted from the formation barrier. Xiao Yan! Come out! Outside the formation barrier that was on the verge of shattering, Zhao Jin placed one hand on the light barrier while his other hand was raised high. Without waiting for anyone to advise him, he suddenly threw a heavy punch downwards. With a bang, the huge formation that enveloped the courtyard exploded with a bang. Zhao Jin's cold gaze immediately swept towards Xiao Yan, who was seated in the middle of the courtyard, after the formation shattered. He coldly snorted and strode towards the latter. His icy voice was once again emitted. Xiao Yan, you actually dare to not stand up to welcome an inner sect elder who has personally come. Stop right there. At this moment, an air-splitting sound suddenly appeared in the sky. Soon after, Xiao Xian's figure took the lead to block Zhao Jin. Lian Er quickly rushed over from beside him. The expression on her pretty face immediately became grave. She naturally recognized Zhao Jin and was well aware of how terrifying the latter was. A bad premonition rose in the young lady's heart the moment she saw him. Xiao Xian frowned as he looked at the person in front of him. Compared to Lian Er, he was naturally more aware of Zhao Jin's strength and character. Since this fellow dared to act so overbearingly in the Xiao clan today, it was likely that he had come prepared. You are Xiao Xian? Even with Zhao Jin's strength, he could not help but be a little surprised as he looked at the figure in front of him who was as tall as a sword. Although this person's cultivation was not as high as Origin Zong's, his aura was even inferior to an Origin Venerate like him. It was truly shocking. Leave the courtyard. Since he knew that Zhao Jin had come with ill intentions, Xiao Xian naturally did not show any unnecessary courtesy. His straightforward words had already expressed his attitude. At the same time, an invisible hurricane suddenly condensed in the sky above his head. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an unparalleled sword chi that roared between heaven and earth, causing the expressions of everyone present to change. In recent years, I often heard that there was a person called Xiao Xian in the clan, but unfortunately, I never had the chance to see him. Now that I have seen him today, he is indeed only a peak origin emperor. Zhao Jin's gaze swept over the sword chi above Xiao Xian's head in an undetectable manner as he sneered. Although the person in front of him had an extraordinary aura, he was ultimately just an origin emperor. There was no need to take him to heart. As soon as Zhao Jin's words left his mouth, anger immediately surfaced on Lian Er's pretty face. Xiao Xian, on the other hand, did not care at all. He pulled the girl behind him and said, "Leave the courtyard yourself or I will chase you out." Haha, there are very few people who have your courage. However, the one who wants to see Xiao Yan today is not me, but a cabinet elder. Zhao Jin laughed heartily. Soon after, he unhurriedly stepped aside. At the same time, the crowd that had gathered behind him swiftly scattered like flowing water. Everyone's eyes swiftly gathered together. Immediately, a couple of exclamations were emitted from the arena. Xiao Xian's gaze followed the crowd. An old man with a slightly gloomy expression and shriveled lips slowly walked over from the crowd. Everyone who saw this old man revealed a respectful expression. Even Zhao Jin, who was still arrogant a moment ago, revealed a humble smile at this moment. This person was the head of the 3 cabinet elders of the Xiao clan. He was also the person who had the highest voice in the entire Xiao clan against Xiao Yan and his grandson staying behind, Xiao Dingtian. Elder. Seeing this person, even with Xiao Xian's temperament, he still bowed to him. With this person's status, everyone in the clan, except for the clan leader, could be said to be a person who could cover the sky with one hand. Even though they did not have a harmonious relationship, they had to treat him with respect due to the rules and etiquette. Xiao Xian, bring Xiao Yan to see this old man. Ignoring Xiao Xian's attitude, Xiao Dingtian ordered indifferently. However, his words were filled with an inviolable meaning. Chapter 1429. Among the crowd, Xiao Xian was currently facing Xiao Dingtian. When the latter's words sounded, even with Xiao Xian's mental state, he couldn't help but frown slightly. I'm sorry, I can't. Xiao Dingtian lifted his eyelids and stared at Xiao Xian. His tone was filled with displeasure. After a few breaths, he spoke again in an indifferent tone. Zhao Jin, bring him over. Yes. Zhao Jin replied and nodded. His eyes quickly landed on Xiao Xian as he parted his mouth into a cold smile. His body moved, and in the blink of an eye, he transformed into a ray of light that rushed toward Xiaoyan on the ruins behind. Almost at the same time, Xiaoxian, who was already prepared, suddenly flashed. While his figure rapidly chased, he quickly formed a seal with his hand. Soon after, a few consecutive sounds of breaking through the air resounded. At this moment, several golden light arrays immediately soared into the sky within a few hundred feet of Xiaoyan. They connected with each other and formed a huge array barrier in the blink of an eye, enveloping Xiaoyan within it. Bang! Zhao Jin's body suddenly arrived the moment the formation was formed. His fist violently smashed against it. However, a muffled bang sounded and the huge formation barrier trembled slightly. However, there was not much change. Compared to the huge light barrier from before, this one was undoubtedly much stronger. Not only was it able to block Zhao Jin's attack, but the force that rebounded from it also forced Zhao Jin to take a couple of steps back. He is indeed an array master. Strange. In the distance, Xiao Dingtian's indifferent eyes revealed a rare look of astonishment when he saw this scene. Even he had only recently found out that Xiao Xian was an array master. Now that he saw it today, it was indeed so. At the same time, he didn't expect the clan leader to be able to hide this matter for so long that even he didn't notice it. Damn it! This guy is actually an array master? Looking at the strength of this array, it should be at grade 7. This old thing actually didn't tell me in advance. At the same time, Zhao Jin, who had personally experienced the formation, could not help but reveal a shocked expression on his face. He could not help but curse in his heart. He forcefully clenched his slightly numb hand. Just as he was about to retreat, he suddenly heard a whistling sound coming from beside his ear. His body quickly turned, and an incomparably sharp sword aura brushed past him, leaving a pitch-black crack in the void. When he stopped, Zhao Jin quickly glanced at the tear on his clothes on his chest, and a huge wave immediately set off in his heart. What a fast sword! A mere peak origin monarch was actually able to use the flying sword in his hand to tear the clothes of an origin venerate expert. This power was heaven-defying. I can't be careless. Zhao Jin quickly glanced at Xiao Xian, who was flying over, and was about to dodge when he suddenly noticed Xiao Dingtian's impatient gaze. Zhao Jin's heart trembled, and he had no choice but to quickly avoid the sword lights that were constantly shooting over. He gritted his teeth, and his figure flashed, arriving in front of the array again. With a thought, mighty Genesis Chi immediately gushed out from his body. His body shook, and the mighty Genesis Chi suddenly swept out, shattering the several sword lights shooting over. At the same time, Genesis Chi condensed between his two palms and slammed into the array. Boom! This time, the formation shook violently under Zhao Jin's fierce bombardment. An invisible wave swept out along with the shaking of the formation, peeling off another layer of the ground that was already shattered. Seeing that the attack was effective, Zhao Jin's eyes lit up, and he slammed his palm down again. It was also at this moment that Xiao Xian's figure rapidly flashed, and he closed his two fingers together to form a sword. Wrapped in unparalleled sword chi, the sword shot straight towards Zhao Jin. Feeling the terrifying sword chi contained in the sword, even someone of Zhao Jin's strength couldn't help but shudder. He had no choice but to retract his palm that should have slammed down. With a flick of his sleeve, similarly wrapped in Genesis chi, he blocked the sword attack like steel. Humph! A mere origin monarch dares to be impudent in front of me. Get lost! After being intercepted several times by an origin monarch, Zhao Jin's expression turned somewhat ugly. His face darkened, and his steel-like sleeve suddenly jerked. Boundless Genesis Chi leaked out and forced Xiao Xian 100 steps back. Almost at the same time, the sleeve wrapped in Genesis Chi unexpectedly burst apart, losing its support and turning into large pieces. It was then shattered into nothingness by the Genesis Chi. Zhao Jin's eyes abruptly widened. He couldn't imagine that Xiao Xian's sword was so powerful, but he couldn't care less. He turned his head, and Genesis Chi rapidly gathered again. In an instant, he repeatedly slammed his palm into the array. Bang 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 bang. The continuous barrage of attacks caused the entire array to tremble even more intensely. Ripples visible to the naked eye continuously swept out from where Zhao Jinqiang had struck. No matter how strong the array was, it was ultimately unable to withstand the full power of a source venerate. If this continued, it would not be able to last for long. Clan leader, why don't I take action? If this continues and that bastard awakens Xiao Yan, I'm afraid this matter won't be resolved. In a certain pavilion outside the array, clan leader Xiao Yuhing and third elder Xiao Mingyuan stood there. The latter couldn't help but frown when he saw that the situation was getting worse. They knew that what had happened a few days ago must have dealt a blow to Xiao Yan's heart. Moreover, the Xiao clan didn't care about that matter, which would deepen Xiao Yan's already bad opinion of the Xiao clan. Now that Zhao Jin had attacked him in public, the situation would be irreversible if he was injured. Xiao Yuhing drew a deep breath. He stared at Xiao Xian and said in a low voice, "Let's wait a little longer. I believe he hasn't used his full strength yet." Even if Zhao Jin was angry, Xiao Xian still hadn't used a single dou skill. He had only used his sword qi to block Zhao Jin's attack. Xiao Yuhing firmly believed that Xiao Xian would be able to display his true strength for Xiao Yan. He believed that Xiao Xian would be able to display even more extraordinary strength than his battle with Xiao Feng. As expected, Xiao Xian finally clenched his teeth and slowly closed his eyes when he saw that the array was nearing its limit under Zhao Jin's continuous attacks. The Genesis Qi in his body gushed out without reservation, and a terrifying aura that looked down on the world rapidly spread from his body. Hu! Xiao Xian slowly exhaled and clenched his fist in the air in front of him. A stream of wind rapidly condensed and turned into an invisible sword. In the void around his body, an invisible curtain formed and a fierce hurricane frantically spun around his body. All of a sudden, the space between the heavens and the earth began to distort. Streaks of invisible sword qi shot out and quickly gathered within the invisible long sword. The piercing cold aura caused many people present to be wary and fearful of it. Xiao Dingtian narrowed his eyes and stared intently at the invisible sword in Xiao Xian's hand. The Genesis Qi in his body quietly circulated. Zhao Jin was still bombarding the great array in front of him with all his might. Just a little more and the great array would shatter. At that time, Xiao Yan would have nowhere to hide. However, at this moment, Xiao Xian's indifferent voice suddenly sounded. "If you dare to break the array, I will kill you." Chapter 1430. Crack. Zhao Jin's palm once again smashed onto the intensely shaking light formation in front of him after Xiao Xian's word sounded. Following a clear cracking sound, the atmosphere in the arena suddenly froze. The solid formation barrier broke with the sound. At this moment, Xiao Xian's face had finally turned from a calm to an extremely cold expression. The invisible long sword in his hand trembled slightly. Immediately, two frightening sword qi surged out from the tip of the sword. The space beside him was instantly cut apart. Even the floating clouds in the sky were cut into two like duckweed in water. Even with Zhao Jin's cultivation, his expression could not help but change when he sensed the frightening aspect of the sword qi. His heart was quietly shocked. Was such a shocking sword qi really something that a mere peak origin emperor could achieve? It was simply unbelievable. Now that the formation has been broken, it is useless to say anything else. Since you want to kill me, this venerable self wants to see just what is so special about an unknown peak origin emperor like you. Even though Zhao Jin was shocked when he learned of Xiao Xian's identity as a formation master, Zhao Jin was completely confident that he could win if they were to fight using dou techniques. Without the support of the formation, Xiao Xian was merely an origin emperor in his eyes. Xiao Xian acted as though he did not hear Zhao Jin's provocative words. He slowly raised the invisible long sword in his hand. His icy cold gaze penetrated through the empty space and landed on Zhao Jin's body. After which, he opened his mouth with a pause between each word. "One sword." The world trembled when these words left his mouth. There seemed to be a Sanskrit sound reverberating through the air, shaking everyone's hearts until they felt a chill. Even their hearts seemed to be moving along with that trembling sound. The members of the Xiao clan around the arena were all looking at the human figure floating in the air with frightened expressions. At this moment, no one dared to judge the latter based on his cultivation. At this moment, who would dare to look directly at the person who usually mocked his cultivation? At this moment, the pair of icy black eyes did not contain the slightest emotion. There was only an abyss-like dark black depth that seemed to be able to swallow one's heart. Another generation. The moment Xiao Xian's voice faded, his figure abruptly disappeared from the void. Almost at the same time, Zhao Jin's expression turned grave. As he rapidly retreated, the Genesis Qi in his body rapidly gathered between his palms. He then flipped his hands and blasted them forward. Freezing sky palm. Baz! An astonishing energy hurricane suddenly swept out, and the already shattered array barrier burst open with a bang, turning into countless fragments before dissipating. Flying dust rose up, forming a dust fog that spread out and blocked everyone's line of sight. Only Xiao Dingtian, who was in the distance, had a slightly serious expression on his face, and he couldn't help but be somewhat surprised. The energy hurricane quickly swept out, and two figures retreated from the flying dust. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Xiao Xian and Zhao Jin. However, at this moment, the auras of the two people were the same as before. The sword qi and icy force in their palms had also gradually dissipated. It was impossible to tell that they had fought. The commotion at this moment was naturally not caused by them. Noticing this, everyone couldn't help but be a little surprised. If it wasn't them, then who could it be? At this moment, the two people on the field looked at the center of the energy storm at the same time. Both of them had different expressions on their faces. Soon, when the flying dust dispersed, everyone's gaze followed the two people's gazes and was abruptly taken aback. At the center of the energy storm, there was a person sitting cross-legged. That person was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, you're finally awake. Zhao Jin's expression immediately turned cold when he saw Xiao Yan, while the coldness in Xiao Xian's eyes quickly faded. His tensed nerves finally relaxed. Soon after, he seemed to have discovered something, and his gaze focused slightly on the former. Although Xiao Yan's appearance didn't seem any different from before, Xiao Xian's shocking spiritual perception allowed him to clearly sense that the aura that emanated from Xiao Yan's body was swiftly becoming stronger. At the same time, strands of natural energy uncontrollably gathered above his head. They were gradually forming an energy whirlpool at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the looks of it, it was a sign that his cultivation was about to break through. He's actually about to break through. Zhao Jin knit his brows and muttered when he saw this. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Xiao Yan, who was seated cross-legged in the arena. He turned his gaze and looked at Xiao Dingtian a short distance away. At this moment, the latter was similarly staring intently at Xiao Yan with his old eyes. He frowned slightly, appearing to be thinking about something. Therefore, he did not sense the gaze that the former shot over. The surrounding onlookers also had faces of surprise as they watched Xiao Yan in the arena. Although most of them did not think well of Xiao Yan, he had only entered the clan for less than a month and his cultivation was about to break through. Once this news was spread, it would definitely cause many people to look at him in a different light. At that time, those people who usually had hostile gazes towards Xiao Yan would naturally have to reconsider. However, right at this moment, swoosh! A sharp sound of rushing air suddenly sounded. In front of everyone's surprised eyes, Zhao Jin's body suddenly charged forward. His body was as fast as lightning as he directly faced Xiao Yan in the arena. Xiao Yan's expression changed. He knew that this matter would definitely benefit Xiao Yan. However, his purpose of entering the Xiao clan this time was to chase Xiao Yan out and raise the status of the Zhao clan in the Xiao clan. At this moment, he absolutely couldn't allow any accidents to happen. The sudden scene didn't only cause Xiao Xian's expression to change drastically. Even Xiao Dingtian, who was standing far away, couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. "Idiot! What are you doing?" Xiao Dingtian roared furiously. Although he had the intention to stop Zhao Jin had suddenly attacked and was already close to Xiao Yan. Even Xiao Dingtian wouldn't be able to stop him in time. As for Xiao Xian, it was even more impossible. Looking at Zhao Jin, who was about to attack Xiao Yan, the fury in Xiao Dingtian's heart burned even more. For his own selfish reasons, Zhao Jin had openly attacked Xiao Yan, who was about to break through, in front of everyone. Not only did Zhao Jin not care about Xiao Dingtian's reputation, but he had also disregarded everyone in the Xiao clan. Even if Xiao Yan wasn't a direct descendant, even if he wasn't liked by others, no matter what, Xiao Yan was still a member of the Xiao clan. How could he allow others to taint his blood? Zhao Jin's current actions were simply foolish to the extreme. Hearing this, Zhao Jin wasn't afraid at all. He let out a sinister laugh and looked at Xiao Yan, who was less than 10 feet away from him. He raised his head and shouted. Although Xiao Yan is a member of the Xiao clan, he has secretly colluded with the Ouyang clan and has ill intentions. Zhao Jin's actions are also to eliminate evil for our Xiao clan, Elder. Chapter 1431. Zhao Jin's roar was like a command from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, Zhao Jin unhesitatingly slammed his palm down on Xiao Yan's head. If this attack struck, Even if Xiao Yan did not die, he would become an idiot in an instant. The energy of the universe was still frantically gathering above Xiao Yan's head. His cheeks unknowingly swelled as the Genesis Qi in his body began to circulate. Although he was currently in the midst of a breakthrough, he was not completely unaware of the outside world. In the face of Zhao Jin's ruthless actions, he had no choice but to face it head-on even if it meant damaging his cultivation. Scram! You've caused my Zhao clan to exhaust all of its wealth. Today, not only will I expel you, I will also take back what we've lost. Zhao Jin looked down at Xiao Yan who was in front of him from top to bottom. A biting cold air swiftly agglomerated in his palm. With a savage smile on his face, it suddenly fell. Boom! In an instant, a low and deep explosion sound suddenly resounded. Immediately, a circular shocking energy ripple suddenly spread apart. Along the way, the ground once again crumbled. After which, it transformed into a thick layer of dust. Half of the building that was already on the verge of collapse finally collapsed with a loud bang under this attack. Many people in the vicinity were shocked by this scene. Zhao Jin was a Genesis Venerate expert after all. If he could create such a huge commotion with just a simple move, how terrifying would it be if he really fought? Dust flew. Soon after, another low and deep collision sound appeared. A human figure swiftly flew out from the point of collision. His feet continuously took 100 steps in the air before he managed to stabilize his body. Raising his head to take a look, this person was undoubtedly Zhao Jin. A cool breeze blew over, scattering the dust in the air to reveal an old man. Behind him, Xiao Yan was still endlessly absorbing the energy of the universe. His aura had already reached the level of a 3-star origin ancestor. It would only take a few moments for his aura to completely stabilize before he would truly break through. Zhao Jin, the clan has always been lenient towards you because you've always been strict in your work. However, I didn't expect you to be so unscrupulous and shameless as to openly attack a member of the Xiao clan. Are you challenging the dignity of the Xiao clan? Xiao Mingyuan glanced at Xiao Yan behind him who was not affected. Only then did he turn his head around. His face was ice-cold as he stared at Zhao Jin in the distance and scolded in a deep voice. Zhao Jin's face immediately turned ashen. He did not expect Xiao Mingyuan to suddenly appear at such a crucial moment. Xiao Mingyuan's sharp words were directly aimed at his heart, bringing out the entire Zhao clan. Sure enough, the eyes of the surrounding members of the Xiao clan involuntarily landed on Zhao Jin after Xiao Mingyuan's words sounded. Many of them had more or less received the disdain from Zhao Jin. Some of them had even been in deep trouble because of Zhao Jin. Now that Xiao Mingyuan had spoken, the enmity that was hidden deep in their hearts could not be hidden and was revealed. Seeing this, Zhao Jin's heart could not help but shudder. His eyes flickered and he hurriedly shouted, "Third Elder, you're wrong. The Zhao clan's loyalty to the Xiao clan can be witnessed by heaven and earth. I'm only doing this because I don't want the clan to be deceived for nothing." Xiao Mingyuan's face darkened, and the people present could not help but sneer when they heard this. Zhao Jin, however, did not care. He rolled his eyes and continued to shout. The day before yesterday, Xiao Yan secretly left the clan and met with the heir of the Ouyang clan, Xiao Yan, in Shuyang City. I accidentally bumped into him. Although I tried my best to persuade him, not only did he not listen, he even ordered Fan Jian, a subordinate of the Ouyang clan, to attack me. I was no match for him, so I retreated. If Third Elder does not believe me, you can ask young Master Xiao Tian. Young Master was also present at that time, and he can be a witness. After speaking, Zhao Jin looked at Xiao Mingyuan with an innocent face and said sternly, I know that Third Elder has a good relationship with Xiao Yan, but I hope that Third Elder will not be biased when it comes to the clan's matters. As soon as these words came out, the discussion in the hall immediately became much quieter. Many people turned to look at Xiao Yan, who was still sitting cross-legged. If this was the case, then there was nothing wrong with Zhao Jin's actions today. Moreover, Xiao Yan had just entered the Xiao clan for less than a month. Where did he get to know the heir of the Ouyang clan? Secretly meeting him was even more taboo. Once it was confirmed, even if Xiao Yan had great ability, it would be difficult for him to stay in the Xiao clan. Thinking of this, Xiao Mingyuan's heart sank. He naturally understood the deep meaning of Zhao Jin's actions, but since he had brought out a witness, it meant that there were more than one person who knew about this matter. This matter must be true. Then Xiao Yan. You're lying. We just happened to meet the heir of the Ouyang clan, so. That's why he ordered Fan Jian to attack me, so everything I said is true. Beside Xianxia, Lian Er's face was filled with anger. However, before she could finish speaking, Zhao Jin's strong words caused the surrounding people to believe Zhao Jin's words even more. After all, even the person beside Xiao Yan had admitted it, so why would Zhao Jin need to lie? Immediately, the people of the Xiao clan began to discuss again. The topic shifted from Zhao Jin to Xiao Yan's group. Xiao Xian frowned. Even though he knew the ins and outs of this matter, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Now that the situation was set, if he said anything more, it would only add fuel to the fire and add more trouble. However, at this moment, a cold laugh suddenly sounded. Hee hee, Patriarch Zhao really has a glib tongue. Not only did you distort the facts with just a few words, but you also pushed all the blame onto me. You really have the demeanor of a powerhouse. As soon as the voice sounded, everyone immediately looked over. Xiao Xian and Xiao Mingyuan could not help but let out a sigh of relief as a smile reappeared on their faces. Although the situation was still under Zhao Jin's control, they immediately felt much more relaxed when Xiao Yan spoke, as if all the troubles would be easily solved. In fact, it was indeed so. Haha, you've made a breakthrough? Xiao Mingyuan smiled as he looked at Xiao Yan, who had a calm expression on his face. He sized Xiao Yan up and nodded with a smile. Yes, thank you, Third Elder. Xiao Yan nodded and said, Haha, I didn't expect you to have a breakthrough in your cultivation after coming back for less than a month. Looks like you're determined to win the clan gathering in a few months. Xiao Mingyuan laughed loudly as though he had already forgotten what Zhao Jin had said a moment ago. Zhao Jin pursed his lips and smiled when he heard it. He let out a sigh and his expression suddenly turned cold as he said in an indifferent tone, Of course. Bai Hua risked her life for me. Of course, I have to give the Xiao clan a surprise. As soon as the words came out, Xiao Mingyuan's face suddenly froze. Chapter 1432. Under everyone's gazes, Xiao Yan's expression was calm as he slowly swept his gaze across the entire place. Amidst the various gazes and discussions, his gaze landed on Zhao Jin, who was also staring at him. Humph, Xiao Yan, since things have already developed to this stage, it is useless for you to quibble. You betrayed the clan and colluded with outsiders to commit such a heinous act. Today, I will reveal your true colors. Zhao Jin's eyes involuntarily flashed when he saw Xiao Yan's gaze shooting over. He opened his mouth slightly before he lifted his head and shouted with a righteous expression. You! On the other side, the anger on Lian Er's pretty face grew. Just as she was about to speak, she was stopped by Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian waved his hand at Xiao Yan, indicating for the latter to be at ease. Only then did the young lady withdraw her hand with a furious expression. Noisy! Xiao Yan merely glanced indifferently at Zhao Jin's deafening shout and laughed softly. The disdainful words from his mouth caused Zhao Jin's face to immediately darken. However, the former seemed to have not discovered it and ignored it. He lifted his foot and walked straight towards Xiao Xian and Lian Er. I have made the two of you worry for the past few days. Xiao Yan gave Xiao Xian a relaxed smile after arriving in front of him. The calmness in his smile caused the last thread of worry in Xiao Xian's heart to disappear. Lian Er by the side also pursed her red lips. A lovely smile surfaced on her exquisite pretty face. Soon after, she frowned and acted evil. She stared at Zhao Jin in the distance and spoke with a vicious face. That Zhao Jin is really rude. I have to teach him a lesson later. Hearing this, Xiao Yan gently nodded his head and smiled at the young lady. Don't worry, I definitely will. Be careful. That fellow even invited Xiao Dingtian over. It can be seen that he must have come prepared. I'm afraid that he intends to fight it out with you. Once he grasps the opportunity, we will have no choice but to leave the Xiao clan. Xiao Xian used his eyes to indicate Xiao Yan to the crowd in the distance. Xiao Dingtian was standing there. When the latter discovered that the grandfather and grandson's gazes had shot over, he also narrowed his eyes and stared at the two of them. So he is Xiao Dingtian, the leader of the three inner pavilions. He is also the person with the highest voice against us staying in the Xiao clan. Xiao Yan stared intently at the elderly figure as an icy glint flashed across the depths of his eyes. At the end of the day, wasn't all the trouble they had encountered recently because of him? Third Elder, since this matter has come to a conclusion, can we convict this fellow? Colluding with an outsider is a crime of betrayal. According to the rules of the clan, We should destroy his cultivation and chase him out of the clan. At this moment, Zhao Jingran's voice once again sounded. Only then did Xiao Yan unhurriedly turn his gaze to the latter. He eyed Zhao Jingran's appearance of a vile person intoxicated with success. A layer of icy cold killing intent gradually surfaced in Xiao Yan's dark black eyes. He originally didn't want to be enemies with Zhao Jin. However, Zhao Jin had repeatedly targeted them in an overbearing manner. He was simply going too far. Xiao Mingyuan couldn't help but frown when he heard this. His face was a little ugly. Zhao Jin's actions were to use his mouth to convict Xiao Yan of the crime. Such actions could be said to be heart-wrenching. It was a pity that although this method was ruthless, Xiao Mingyuan couldn't do it. Although he didn't have a deep relationship with Xiao Yan, he could tell that Xiao Yan was unwilling to be under others. He could believe that Xiao Yan had a desire in his heart. However, it was impossible for Xiao Yan to have a disloyal heart and forsake his loyalty. Not to mention anything else, even if Xiao Yan was sincerely willing to return to the clan, Xiao Yan would never do such a disdainful thing. However, the most important thing now wasn't how he viewed Xiao Yan. Instead, it was the increasing number of Xiao clan members that had gathered around. These people had already believed Xiao Yan's actions after Zhao Jin's words. As long as they didn't shut their mouths, even the clan leader wouldn't be able to solve the problem. Humph, to think that the clan leader gave this brat the treatment of a prince when he just entered the clan. I didn't expect him to be a lackey of the Ouyang clan. No wonder he made a breakthrough in his cultivation so quickly. It seems like he got a lot of benefits from the Ouyang clan this time around. What's the point of keeping this kind of scum alive? It's better to just cripple his cultivation and chase him out. Let him fend for himself. It's better to just kill him so that he won't ruin the reputation of the Xiao clan after he leaves. Sure enough, as the number of people gathered around increased, the discussion in the stadium gradually became noisy. Various soft curses were continuously emitted. Some of the people, who were still holding envious gazes toward Xiao Yan's breakthrough a moment ago, now had faces filled with disdain as they ridiculed him. At the same time, the cold smile that was filled with ridicule on Zhao Jin's face also became denser. Many times, the pressure one faced was naturally different due to one's position. This was especially so in a superforce that was formed by clans. Even if one was innocent, one was destined to be deeply immersed in the heated discussion until one went crazy. As the saying goes, gossip is a fearful thing. However, even so, Xiao Yan's face was still calm when he was faced with the hostile gazes of tens of thousands of people. He had experienced too many things like this and he no longer took it to heart. Moreover, the so-called same origin was extremely laughable in his opinion. Although the Xiao clan before him was powerful, it could not even be compared to the Xiao clan in Wutan City in a certain aspect. Xiao Yan slowly lifted his gaze and swept across the surrounding crowd that was filled with various gazes. His cold gaze caused those people to shrink back in fear when they came into contact with his gaze. When Xiao Yan saw this, he couldn't help but sneer. His gaze then landed on Zhao Jin. The two of them looked at each other from a distance and narrowed their eyes. After a long while, they laughed out loud in unison. In front of the crowd in the distance, Xiao Dingtian looked at Xiao Yan's face that didn't have any warmth. A faint chill rose in his heart. This young man seemed to be different from the rest. Ha 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 ha, Elder Xiao Dingtian, this junior has a matter to ask. Is it possible? While Xiao Yan and Zhao Jin were laughing, the former suddenly opened his mouth and even directly called out Xiao Dingtian's name. This caused many people to be shocked. What kind of status did Xiao Dingtian have in the Xiao clan? Usually, even the clan leader had to politely greet him. However, this Xiao Yan in front of them. Speak. What is it? Xiao Dingtian narrowed his old eyes. He was used to being respected by others. At this moment, even he was a little surprised by Xiao Yan's sudden action. Although he was also dissatisfied, he was more curious about Xiao Yan's strange words. Xiao Yan looked at Zhao Jin. The ridicule that was emitted from his eyes suddenly caused Zhao Jin's heart to leap abruptly. The smile on his face was immediately withdrawn. If this junior remembers correctly, there seems to be a rule in the Xiao clan. Unless there is a war, no one in the Xiao clan is allowed to attack the two great clans and their subordinate factions without permission. Those who violate this rule will be punished severely. Am I right? When his voice sounded, Xiao Yan's gaze also landed on Zhao Jin. When the two of them looked at each other, Zhao Jin's face turned ashen. His heart was incomparably shocked. Chapter 1433. On the stage, Zhao Jin's face turned ashen when he heard Xiao Yan's words. He stared wide-eyed at Xiao Yan, his eyes filled with disbelief. He was not a fool. Since the former was able to utter such words, it was obvious that he knew something. Zhao Jin's and Xiao Yan's hearts were incomparably clear about this matter. Outside the arena, Xiao Dingtian couldn't help but frown when he saw the extremely ugly expression on Zhao Jin's face. He pondered for a long time and seemed to have vaguely understood something. However, he didn't say anything in the end. On the other hand, some of the surrounding Xiao clan members recalled this clan rule after some recollections in their minds. Suspicious gazes were shot over one after another. That's right. There is indeed such a rule in the Xiao clan's rules. Its purpose is to prevent other factions from manipulating the three great clans and deliberately provoking a fight between the three great clans. Xiao Mingyuan slowly stepped forward and spoke in a calm voice under everyone's respectful gazes. Although his voice wasn't loud, it reverberated across the sky under the influence of Genesis Qi and rang in the ears of every Xiao clan member present. What are you trying to say? Xiao Dingtian frowned. His old eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan as he asked in a deep voice. Xiao Yan wasn't in a hurry to answer. Instead, he sneered and glanced at Zhao Jin. When he saw the latter's uneasy expression, he couldn't help but snort. A month ago, when I was passing through the Ouyang clan's territory, I encountered a battle. The two sides were the subordinates of Liang City's Zhao clan and Ouyang clan. Uproar. Every Xiao clan member's gaze immediately gathered on Zhao Jin. The Xiao clan's rules clearly stated that they couldn't lightly offend the other two great clans. The Zhao clan's action was openly flouting the clan's rules and was suspected of challenging their authority. How dare you? Zhao Jin, over the years, the entire Xiao clan has tolerated you acting on your own and violating the clan's rules for a long time. From the time your Zhao clan took over Liang City, took charge of the Spirit Stone Mine, and became a nominal elder, the clan has withstood all the pressure for you and never pursued your mistakes. It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful, but you actually did such a rebellious thing and attempted to provoke a war between the Xiao clan and the Ouyang clan. This is truly intolerable. Xiao Mingyuan suddenly blurted out as his curses resounded throughout the entire place. The anger that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time towards Zhao Jin had instantly erupted. His imposing and domineering aura caused even Xiao Dingtian to have to retreat, let alone those ordinary members of the Xiao clan whose status was far inferior to the former. At this moment, Lian Er was probably the only person in the arena who could still laugh complacently after hearing the curses. Standing beside Xiao Mingyuan, even with Xiao Yan's temperament, he was surprised by the former's sudden rage. Zhao Jin's expression was ugly as he hesitated for a long time. Then, he rolled his eyes and hastily swept his gaze across everyone present. Finally, his gaze landed on Xiao Mingyuan as he explained in a soft voice. Third Elder, everyone. I have indeed done many overboard things in the past, but I have already repented and realized my mistakes. Can't everyone see that Xiao Yan obviously has nothing to say and has already begun to frame us? Although my Zhao family's people are usually a little arrogant outside, but it's not to the extent of challenging the Ouyang family's power. In my opinion, this is clearly a plot by him and the Ouyang family to frame my Zhao family. After speaking, Zhao Jin looked at Xiao Dingtian with an aggrieved expression. At this moment, the only person who would speak up for him was probably Xiao Dingtian. It's hard for a petty person to achieve great things. Seeing Zhao Jin's weak gaze, Xiao Dingtian couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Then, he impatiently turned his gaze to Xiao Mingyuan and slowly said, Forget it. Both of you insist on your own words. These words can't be considered true or false. Let's just forget about it. Let's each take a step back and return. After speaking, Xiao Dingtian couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He originally wanted to order Xiao Yan to leave the clan, but things had already reached this stage and it was difficult to find a result. If he continued to be entangled like this, not to mention whether he could gain any benefits, once Zhao Jin leaked the truth, it would bring him quite a bit of trouble. But, Elder! Zhao Jin was just about to open his mouth when he was blocked by a gaze from Xiao Dingtian. Immediately, he could only bitterly withdraw his gaze. Soon after, however, Xiao Yan's eyes flashed. A crafty glint flashed across his eyes as he suddenly said, Patriarch Zhao, as far as I know, the Ouyang family lost a Source Venerate powerhouse in that battle. They won't let this matter rest. Bullshit. How could a mere dozen source kings kill a source venerate? Xiao Yan's words had just sounded when Zhao Jin, who was still staring at Xiao Dingtian's back, subconsciously reprimanded him. However, just as the words from his mouth were about to sound, his eyes suddenly shrank. The expression on his face also gradually solidified. In front of the crowd not far away, Xiao Dingtian, who had just taken a few steps, had an extremely ugly expression on his old face. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered slightly as he exchanged glances with Xiao Xian and smiled. Soon after, he looked at Zhao Jin with a mocking expression and sneered. Patriarch Zhao, when did I say that those people were Kings Yuan? As his laughter faded, everyone in the Xiao clan suddenly understood. If it wasn't him, how could Zhao Jin know that those people were Kings Yuan? If he didn't personally dispatch them, how could he know that there were only a dozen of them? At this very moment, the emotions in Zhao Jin's heart were extremely complicated. His old face was ashen, and his entire body was trembling uncontrollably. How could he have imagined that the trip that was supposed to go smoothly would end up being a complete loss? At this moment, Xiao Mingyuan, who was beside Xiao Yan, also swept a cold gaze at Zhao Jin. His expression was grim as he lifted his foot and walked towards the latter. Xiao clan's rules. Anyone who violates them will be severely punished. Zhao family knowingly broke the rules and didn't change. They should be punished. As the shout rang out, the surrounding Xiao clan's disciples immediately looked at each other. After a few breaths, they followed suit and shouted loudly. They should be punished. They should be punished. They should be punished. Looking at the scene before him, Xiao Yan's expression returned to indifference and his heart was even more unperturbed. In a short period of time, the emotions of everyone present had changed again and again. It was simply like weeds on the wall. The so-called superclans of the continent were ultimately nothing more than this. At this moment, Zhao Jin, who had already become the target of public criticism, could only place his final hope on Xiao Dingtian. The latter was his last life-saving straw. If even Xiao Dingtian was merciless towards him, then his Zhao family would probably have to completely sever ties with the Xiao clan today. Chapter 1434. Enough. Xiao Mingyuan. This person is under this old man's command. Since this matter happened to him, even if there is a punishment, it should be dealt with by this old man personally. Just as Xiao Mingyuan was approaching Zhao Jin step by step, Xiao Dingtian's impatient voice finally sounded once again. His low and deep voice caused the loud shouts of everyone present to swiftly weaken until they were completely silent. At this moment, Zhao Jin suddenly let out a sigh of relief when he heard the former's voice. His ash-white face finally recovered some redness. Xiao Mingyuan's gaze was fixed on Zhao Jin's body. When he saw the latter's expression as though he had just survived a calamity, he let out a cold laugh and refused to give up. To tell you the truth, I don't really believe your words. If I hand him over to you now, you might release him in the next moment. The clan's rules will still be treated as nothing. What punishment is there to talk about? What fairness? This is the Xiao clan. As the Xiao clan's leader, this old man has authority over internal and external affairs. How can I think about ignoring the clan's rules? If you don't believe this old man, you can settle this matter here. Xiao Dingtian's old face sunk. Although the former was a clan elder, he wasn't afraid. If it wasn't for the fact that he was unreasonable in this matter, he wouldn't have to put in so much effort. Hearing this, Xiao Mingyuan raised his eyelids slightly and looked at the latter. His eyes rolled as thoughts flashed through his mind. He swept his gaze across everyone present and said coldly, "Fine. Let's come to a conclusion that everyone is satisfied with so as to avoid unnecessary trouble." Once these words were spoken, Xiao Dingtian secretly let out a sigh of relief. A glint flashed deep within his old eyes. He raised his gaze slightly and glanced at Xiao Yan without leaving a trace. Soon after he slowly said, "Humph." In the end, although Zhao Jin privately ordered his clansmen to invade the Ouyang clan and violate the clan's rules, which can be said to be a crime punishable by death, in this old man's opinion, the contributions that the Zhao clan has made for the clan all these years are obvious to all. Although their contributions can't make up for their mistakes, they don't deserve death. Since this is the case, this old man will remove his status as a clan elder and remove the Zhao clan's authority in Liang City. Are you satisfied with this? As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Jin's face immediately turned ashen. The former's actions could be considered as stripping away all of the Zhao clan's sources of income. Although it was not fatal, in the central region where there were many forces, this was enough to cause the Zhao clan's overall strength to drop by a few levels. Such a move could not be any less ruthless. Xiao Mingyuan couldn't help but feel astonished because of this. Such a decisive decision was probably not as simple and easy as it appeared on the surface. Sure enough, Xiao Dingtian continued to speak, and his words successfully caused the expressions of Xiao Mingyuan, Xiao Yan, and the others to change. Although the Zhao clan is at fault for today's matter, Xiao Yan privately met with the Ouyang clan's young master, and this is undoubtedly a fact. According to the clan's rules, there's bound to be a heavy punishment, but Xiao Dingtian's gaze swept the surroundings, and the words he spoke couldn't help but cause the expressions of Xiao Xian and the others to tighten slightly. Subsequently, their gazes descended onto Xiao Yan. Their gazes met, and the former continued. In the end, his identity is merely an outsider. With this point, there won't be any additional punishment. But the matter of him officially entering the clan will have to be pushed back. You don't have to participate in the clan gathering half a year from now. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Xian's gaze instantly looked towards Xiao Dingtian. Even the third elder, Xiao Mingyuan, similarly stared at the former with an expression of displeasure. His expression was rather unsightly as he spoke with a serious voice. You're simply not distinguishing between public and private matters. The so-called meeting with the Ouyang clan's young master is simply nonsense. It was merely a coincidence. How could it be true? Third elder, you're wrong. If Xiao Yan's matter was purely coincidental, then was the matter of the Zhao clan and the Ouyang clan's fight also coincidental? Third elder is so biased. If this old man were to hand him over to you, I'm afraid it would be unfair. Xiao Dingtian snorted righteously, causing Xiao Mingyuan to be instantly furious and speechless. The surrounding Xiao clan's members also began to quietly discuss this matter. On the other hand, Zhao Jin's face actually revealed an expression of schadenfreude. Unknowingly, this matter had already formed an advantageous situation under Xiao Dingtian's intentional guidance. If he were to receive a heavy punishment, Xiao Yan would definitely not be able to escape. But if Xiao Mingyuan wanted to exonerate the latter, then the punishment that Zhao Jin would receive would definitely be reduced. With this thought, the expression on Xiao Mingyuan's face couldn't help but become even more unsightly. He stared fixedly at Zhao Jin with eyes filled with rage. At this moment, how could he not know Xiao Dingtian's objective? Once he spoke up for Xiao Yan, the latter would definitely take the opportunity to reduce Zhao Jin's crime. The two of them could be said to be born with honor and disgrace. If one were to suffer, the other would suffer. As such, although Zhao Jin couldn't avoid some suffering in the end, it wouldn't be painful or itchy. However, Xiao Yan wasn't fated with the clan gathering, and the relationship between the two could be said to be huge. Haha, according to Elder's opinion, there's nothing wrong with such a conclusion. However, Junior and Ouyang Miao got to know each other in Beihai College. Speaking of which, we can be considered as classmates. If even this level of relationship is to be judged as a crime, then wouldn't everyone in the Xiao clan who is familiar with the Ouyang clan, as well as the various elders, including you, be implicated and be punished? However, at this moment, Xiao Yan, who had been silent for a long time, finally opened his mouth slowly with a smile. When these words came out, everyone present was stunned. Many people even looked at each other with some hesitation in their hearts. Even Xiao Dingtian opened his mouth for a moment and was a little speechless. After a long while he coldly snorted and said, "Humph," twisting words and forcing logic. What a sharp-tongued brat. Ever since the elder mentioned this matter to the younger generation, Xiao Yan did not refute even a single word. Even the specific circumstances of the meeting between the younger generation and Ouyang Miao were described by the head of the Zhao clan alone. Without even the slightest inquiry, he insisted that Xiao Yan was related to the Ouyang clan and ordered the younger generation not to participate in the clan gathering. The younger generation thinks that this is a punishment or is elder purposefully doing so. Xiao Yan said with an indifferent face. You dare. You're just an outsider. What right do you have to speak to me like this? Xiao Dingtian was so angry that his face trembled violently. His mouth was hoarse as he angrily shouted. Immediately after, he was so angry that he laughed and said sternly, Good. Since you want to participate in the clan gathering, I will give you this opportunity. Tomorrow, Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin, who are out training, will return to the clan. If you can defeat them, I won't mention anything about the clan gathering. If you can't, you will leave the Xiao clan. Alright. Xiao Mingyuan's face changed slightly when he heard that. But before he could explain to Xiao Yan in detail, the latter had already blurted out and agreed to the former's agreement. I hope Elder will be a man of few words. Xiao Yan pursed his lips and smiled at Xiao Dingtian. Humph. Let's talk about it after you defeat them. Hearing that, Xiao Dingtian snorted coldly and couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He turned around and was about to leave when Xiao Dingtian suddenly spoke again and ridiculed. Elder, if you leave, what will happen to clan head Xiao? Do as you see fit. Xiao Dingtian waved his big sleeve and turned around to leave. On the spot, Zhao Jin's face finally revealed a trace of fear. P.S. Just opened a public account. Weekly chapters. Those who are interested can follow it. Chapter 1435. It was almost dusk. Xiao Yan and the others were led into the main hall by an elder in a courtyard of the Xiao clan. Haha, this is the main hall. This courtyard was built according to the residents of the heir. The size and location are not bad. If you need anything, you can look for me at any time. The elder led them into the main hall and smiled. Thank you for your trouble, Elder Tang. Xiao Yan smiled and cupped his hands towards the elder. The person in front of him was Xiao Qingtang, who had sent by Hua and Liener into the Xiao clan. Haha, this courtyard was originally your residence. I only brought you here. It is nothing. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave first. Xiao Qingtang nodded and smiled. He cupped his hands towards the group and turned to leave. Xiao Yan's group only exchanged glances with each other after seeing Xiao Yan leave. They entered the empty hall. After taking their seats, Xiao Xian went straight to the main topic. You must be careful in tomorrow's battle. It has been a long time since we last met. The cultivation of those two children has probably improved by quite a bit. They cannot be underestimated. Xiao Yan raised his brows slightly and asked in surprise. You know Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin? Xiao Xian nodded slightly and said, They are the grandsons of Xiao Gan and Xiao Dingtian. I met them a few times when I first entered the Xiao clan. They stepped into the Genesis sect at such a young age. Their cultivation and talent are not bad. They have been training outside for the past 2 years. I did not expect them to return to the clan at this time. Xiao Xian could not help but reveal a look of admiration when he recalled the two of them. When I first met them, their cultivation was at the 2-star Genesis sect level. Now that a few years have passed, they have probably reached the 4-star Genesis sect level. It will be quite difficult for you to meet them with your current cultivation. 4-star Genesis sect level, huh? With my current strength, it will not be difficult to defeat them if only one of them reaches the 4-star Genesis sect level. Xiao Yan gently nodded when he heard this. He gently clenched his hand and sensed the vaguely present strength in his palm. After which, he thought for a moment before slowly replying. All right. As long as you're confident. Xiao Xian smiled and then stood up. He glanced at Liener, who was lying on a chair with a drowsy expression. His eyes involuntarily revealed a doting expression as he said, Don't worry, Liener. All right, you must be tired these days. Have a good rest tonight. Don't be careless in tomorrow's battle. Xiao Xian slowly carried the sleeping girl after saying these words. He walked toward the room at the back of the hall. Xiao Yan watched Xiao Xian's back as he slowly walked away. He involuntarily came to a sudden understanding. If the Xiao Xian that he usually saw was a wise elder, the current Xiao Xian appeared like a father. This was especially the case when he looked at Lien Er each time. His eyes were filled with an incomparable gentleness. After randomly finding a bedroom, Xiao Yan was not in a hurry to sleep after entering. Even though he was quite tired from the constant churning of his emotions these past few days, at this moment, he still chose to sit cross-legged and cultivate. His cultivation, which had just broken through, had yet to completely consolidate. It could be said that whether it was circulating or erupting, it would not achieve the desired effect. It would naturally be best if he could refine it as soon as possible. Night fell. On the bed, Xiao Yan was still immersed in cultivation. As time passed, the Genesis Qi in his body had already reached its peak. However, Xiao Yan was not in a hurry to withdraw from his cultivation. Instead, he persisted in absorbing the Genesis Qi in his body. When the Genesis Chi in his body reached its peak, he would refine it and completely consolidate his cultivation. At a certain moment, when the natural energy lingering all over Xiao Yan's body began to scatter uncontrollably, Xiao Yan, who had his eyes tightly shut, suddenly opened them. He opened his mouth and a suction force immediately surged out. At the same time, a fierce fire began to wildly refine the pure Genesis Chi within the Chi paths in his body, refining and absorbing the energy that had already been refined to the purest state. Only when all the energy contained an absolute explosive force did the entire training process finally come to an end. Phew! Xiao Yan slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air that had been suppressed in his chest. His tensed body finally relaxed at this moment. Immediately, a sore and numb feeling involuntarily surfaced in his heart. His body immediately fell back onto the soft bed, and the thoughts in his mind could not help but become drowsy. The high degree of concentration over the past few days had indeed exhausted him. It was only now that he could finally relax and rest. However, just as the drowsiness enveloped his heart, Xiao Yan, whose eyelids had just closed, suddenly stood up from the bed. He fiercely shook his head, dispelling the turbid tiredness. Only then did he take out a jade box from his storage ring with a slightly dazed expression. He opened it, revealing a pill that was distinctly black and white. This pill was naturally formed from Bai Hua and the creation pill that had been collected by the pill transformation ring. However, it seemed that the final outcome of the pill was still difficult to predict. The black and white colors on the medicinal pill were still distinct. However, under Xiao Yan's careful observation, he realized that the portion that was originally occupied by the white color was gradually being eroded by the black color. This also meant that Bai Hua's body and consciousness were being swallowed by the mutated creation pill. This wasn't a good result. Upon sensing this, Xiao Yan's heart abruptly sank, and the chaotic thoughts in his mind immediately cleared. His brows were tightly furrowed as he observed the pill in his hand, while his other hand involuntarily clenched tightly. The next day, in the large hall, when Xiao Yan arrived, he saw third elder Xiao Mingyuan anxiously waiting for him. When he saw Xiao Yan appear, a worried expression immediately appeared on his old face. "You brat, this old man really doesn't know whether to call you courageous or foolish." Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin advanced to the Source Ancestor stage a few years ago, and when they left the clan to train outside, their cultivations had already reached the 2-star Source Ancestor stage, which is not much different from you before yesterday. After not seeing each other for a few years, their cultivations must be even stronger than before. If you were to really fight with the two of them today, wouldn't you be playing right into their hands? Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan was slightly startled at first, but soon after, he gently smiled. He received the tea that Lianer had brought over and took a sip. He turned around and sat on a chair to the side, shrugged his shoulders and said, I already know all of this. Moreover, Xiao Dingtian had already said so much yesterday. If I don't accept it, I'm afraid he will use even more excuses. In any case, the outcome will be the same. Why should I beat around the bush and waste my breath on him? You brat, if you didn't accept, this old man could still deal with him a little. Now that you've said it, there's no room for negotiation. Xiao Mingyuan hatefully said. There's no need to negotiate. He's here. Xiao Yan smiled and turned his gaze towards the front door of the courtyard outside the hall. At this moment, a youth was standing there. It was none other than Xiao Feng without a doubt. Chapter 1436. Xiao Feng slowly walked into the hall, and everyone's gazes landed on him. Lian looked at him with some lingering fear. When she saw Xiao Xian walk in, she quickly hid behind Xiao Xian. I didn't expect you to call me. Xiao Yan slowly stood up. He looked at Xiao Feng in front of him and spoke with a smile. Xiao Mingyuan was also stunned by the former's appearance. He was a little surprised. Even Xiao Dingtian had no authority to order the prince to do anything, but the outcome was actually like this. I'm here on my own behalf, and it has nothing to do with Xiao Dingtian. Xiao Feng slowly shook his head and continued, I'm just curious. Do you really intend to accept the challenge without any other preparations? Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows and could not help but smile. He immediately teased. He then teased, Are you concerned about your opponent? I just feel that it's not worth it. You should know the strength of Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin. Even if you can defeat one of them, it will be enough for you to use all your strength. From the moment you agreed to this battle, you were already destined to lose. Xiao Feng stared at Xiao Yan and said in a deep tone. Even Xiao Mingyuan couldn't help but frown as he looked at the latter. Although these words weren't pleasant to the ears, it was the truth. Regardless of how one looked at it, Xiao Yan would undoubtedly lose if he were to face two even stronger experts from the Source sect by himself. The price of this battle was something that they were clearly aware of in their hearts. This was also the reason why Xiao Mingyuan wished to prevent Xiao Yan from participating in this battle. It's a great taboo to be afraid before the battle. Hearing this, Xiao Yan merely smiled and replied with a sentence. Following which, he once again spoke. Xiao Yan appreciates the prince's intentions, but a man must do what he says. This battle concerns the survival of me and my grandson in the Xiao clan. Xiao Yan has no way out. The Xiao clan is huge, and you have the patriarch and first elder behind you. If you are in trouble, they will definitely help you. How can you say that you have no way out? Xiao Feng frowned. Just as he finished speaking, Xiao Yan's expression suddenly changed. A ferocious anger surfaced on his calm face as he suddenly roared. If that's the case, why didn't they stop by Hua when she was in danger? That night, there were so many pairs of eyes watching with their own eyes. Why didn't they help? Tell me. Xiao Feng's words instantly ignited the fury that Xiao Yan had been suppressing for the past few days. His eyes instantly turned scarlet as he stared at Xiao Mingyuan. Where was the third elder of the Xiao clan at that time? Xiao Yan. At that time, I went out to handle some matters and only returned to the clan at 10 in the morning. When I found out about that matter, an ashamed expression involuntarily surfaced on Xiao Mingyuan's old face when he was stared at by Xiao Yan in this manner. He knew that Xiao Yan had an extremely good relationship with the people beside him and understood the position they held in Xiao Yan's heart. However, even he was quite helpless with regards to that matter. It wasn't that the patriarch didn't want to interfere in that matter, but once he did, the three elders would definitely use this as an excuse to make things difficult for Xiao Yan. At that time, even if they could save Bai Hua, the matter would be completely blown up. They might not be able to continue staying in the Xiao clan. It was also because of this that the patriarch and the three elders kept each other in check and didn't interfere. But now, Xiao Mingyuan also understood that it was too late for him to say anything. Sigh. Xiao Mingyuan sighed helplessly. He also regretted that he didn't hurry back to the clan as soon as possible, which led to the irreversible situation. After a long while, Xiao Yan gradually woke up from his anger. He looked at Xiao Xian and saw the latter nodding his head. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief and said with some exhaustion, "The two of you, please return." Once he said those words, he ignored the two of them, turned around and returned to his room. Last night, Xiao Yan did not sleep at all because of the medicinal pill. Now that he had vented, he finally felt a tiredness that could not be stopped from climbing into his mind. At this moment, Xiao Yan only wanted to have a good sleep. In the hall, Xiao Mingyuan and Xiao Feng looked at each other and saw a helpless expression in each other's eyes. Since the matter had already been decided, it was no longer something they could change. Moreover, the matter yesterday was seen and heard by more than half of the Xiao clan. Even if the patriarch stepped in, he wouldn't be able to easily change it. It was likely that they could only pray that Xiao Yan wouldn't be defeated by the two of them. However, just as the two of them walked out of the hall and arrived at the courtyard outside, another familiar figure appeared outside the door. Xiao Mingyuan and Xiao Feng raised their eyes and looked over. This person was actually Xiao Tian. "You can't be here to persuade him to give up, right?" Xiao Feng said slowly as he looked at Xiao Tian in front of him. The crown prince had always been independent in the clan. Although there were many elders supporting him, he didn't have a good relationship with most of the clan's disciples. The person in front of him was one of them. "So, you have already persuaded Xiao Yan?" Hearing this, a surprised expression appeared on Xiao Tian's face. With a subtle relationship between Xiao Yan and the former, he actually took the initiative to persuade Xiao Yan to give up? If that's the case, then there's no need to say anything more. He won't give up. Even if the patriarch steps in today to persuade him, he won't waver in the slightest. Unfortunately, I'm not here to persuade him to give up. I'm here to ask him to accept the challenge. The moment Xiao Feng finished speaking, Xiao Tian sneered and bowed to Xiao Mingyuan. After which, he walked past the two of them and went straight to the main hall. At the same time, an invitation letter appeared in his hand. Xiao Yan, the great deacon has ordered me to invite you to accept the challenge. Striding into the hall, Xiao Tian casually waved his hand and threw the invitation letter in his hand towards Xiao Yan, who had his back facing him. Just as the invitation letter was about to hit Xiao Yan's back, Xiao Tian leisurely raised his hand and caught it. At the same time, he turned around to face Xiao Yan. What is this? Looking at the invitation letter in his hand that was sealed, Xiao Yan glanced at Xiao Tian and asked indifferently. At the same time, the two people who had yet to leave followed closely behind and entered the hall. Their gazes simultaneously fell on the invitation letter in Xiao Yan's hand. Since this challenge is based on where you will go, then naturally, it has to be more formal. Open the invitation letter and imprint your spiritual imprint. After this, the invitation letter will be publicized in the clan. No! Almost at the same time, when Xiao Mingyuan's and Xiao Feng's exclamations were emitted, the spiritual strength between Xiao Yan's brows had already invaded the ironing post. The instant the ironing post was opened, a flame symbol was imprinted on it. Bas! On the other side, in a huge fighting arena within the Xiao clan, Xiao Yan's name slowly appeared on a stone tablet. Above it were two other names, Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin. Chapter 1437. The Xiao clan's battle arena was the largest battle arena in the Xiao clan. The area was extremely wide and it was about 1,000 feet wide. The entire arena was made up of a hump that had been cut horizontally. It had once hosted countless battles within the clan. Even the clan gathering would be held here. For many years, the stone platform had been eroded by time and the impact of battles. However, there weren't many traces left on it. Usually, there would be many disciples of the Xiao clan sparring and training here. Today's battle arena had undoubtedly welcomed the most exciting moment in the past 2 years. This was because the ones who were going to fight on the stage were the most powerful younger generation in the Xiao clan and Xiao Yan, whose name had spread throughout the Xiao clan within a short month. Most importantly, this battle wasn't just a battle between the most powerful generation. Even the entire event was related to the fate of Xiao Yan and his ancestor, Xiao Xian. It could be said to be a matter of survival. Around the fighting arena, there were rows of seats that were connected to the stone platform itself. At this moment, the seats that few people usually stepped on were filled with a black mass of heads. There were even many people who rushed over from outside the arena, pouring in continuously like a tide. This time around, the exchange between Xiao Yan and Xiao Lei had indeed attracted the attention of quite a number of members of the Xiao clan. This was especially the case for the younger generation of the Xiao clan. They were even more curious. Compared to the peak experts among the younger generation of the Xiao clan, just what kind of strength did this clan member, who had returned from the outside world, possess? Even though they had heard many things about Xiao Yan before this, curiosity and suspicion were human instincts. Everything couldn't be considered true before they witnessed it with their own eyes. Today, it was the best opportunity to verify all the rumors. At the top of the seats on both sides of the martial arts arena, there were some seats that were clearly more luxurious. At this moment, a portion of the clan's elders who held authority were seated on these seats. These people were basically invited by Xiao Dingtian. From their current positions, they were able to look down from a high vantage point, allowing them to see every single part of the arena. At this very moment, two handsome young men were standing in the middle of the fighting arena. If one were to carefully look at them, there was indeed less of the arrogance that belonged to a young man between the brows of these two people. Instead, there was a weather-beaten calmness and introspection. The few years of training outside allowed the two of them to have an even broader understanding of this continent. Not only had their strength increased, even their intelligence and physiques were greatly different from those of the same age. Looking at the eager faces of their peers in the surrounding viewing platform, the two of them couldn't help but look at each other. After which, they helplessly shrugged their shoulders and didn't say anything. At the top of the stone platform, Xiao Dingtian looked at the noisy crowd below and the stone platform that was still empty. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Looking at the situation on the stone tablet, it was obvious that Xiao Yan had left a spiritual imprint on the iron tablet. However, it had been a long time. Why hadn't the latter appeared? What is going on? Looking at the color of the sky, it is clearly close to noon. It has been 4 to 6 hours since the beginning of the morning. Why hasn't he appeared yet? Xiao Dingtian muttered softly. With a gentle wave of his hand, someone beside him immediately stepped forward to welcome him. Immediately go to Xiao Yan's residence to check. It has been so long. Why hasn't he appeared yet? Tell him that if he doesn't appear within an hour, this old man will treat it as him admitting defeat and bear the consequences. Xiao Dingtian ordered in a low voice. Just as the guard beside him was about to leave, everyone's gazes suddenly turned towards the entrance of the battle arena in the next moment. A few figures had unknowingly appeared there. Upon closer inspection, it was surprisingly Xiao Yan and the rest. At this moment, the third elder Xiao Mingyuan, Crown Prince Xiao Feng, Xiao Tian and the rest were beside the latter. Wow! When the main character appeared, the entire battle arena was in an uproar. Numerous gazes fell on Xiao Yan. As the main character of today's battle arena, Xiao Yan had made everyone wait for a long time. At this moment, the earth-shattering collision that everyone had been anticipating was finally about to arrive. At the center of the battle arena, Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin's gazes had also landed on Xiao Yan, who had arrived late. As expected of a 3-star source ancestor, he only broke through yesterday. With such a cultivation, isn't it a little too much for the two of us to suppress him? Sensing Xiao Yan's cultivation, the two brothers couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Xiao Zhuobin even sneered and teased the person beside him. This is more or less an order from your biological grandfather. Aren't you afraid that the old man will be disappointed by your words? Hearing this, Xiao Lei curled his lips and rolled his eyes at the latter. Aren't you afraid? If it wasn't for the fact that we didn't want to be restricted by their pedantic rules, why would the two of us apply to leave the clan to train before even going through the clan sacrifice? After these words were spoken, the two of them immediately fell silent. They looked at Xiao Yan, who was slowly walking over as if there was no one around him, and couldn't help but sigh. Sigh. Another pitiful person restrained by pedantry. That's right. Although you and I have been ordered to return by the clan, Big Brother and the rest seem to still be outside. Xiao Lei looked at Xiao Yan, and his eyes suddenly flashed as he thought of something. That's right. It's said that his cultivation is about to break through, and he won't be back for a while. Speaking of which, second sister is still looking for medicinal ingredients for his breakthrough. I met her once a month ago. TSK, not only has his cultivation risen, even his alchemy skills have neared rank 7. Xiao Zhuobin frowned and slowly sighed. Rank 7? How terrifying. Even with third elder's alchemy skills, he is at most rank 8. This disciple of his seems to be even more astonishing than him. I have heard earlier that this little brother Xiao Yan of ours seems to be an alchemist of quite a high tier. I wonder just what kind of explosive scene it would be if he were to meet second sister. Xiao Lei's words had just faded when Xiao Zhuobin, who was staring at Xiao Yan, let out a burst of laughter. This caused Xiao Lei's eyebrows to twitch again, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of shock in his heart. If Xiao Yan's mere cultivation of a 3-star source ancestor was not enough to surprise him, then if he added his identity as an alchemist, his talent was truly terrifying. A solemn expression gradually surfaced on Xiao Lei's face as he looked at the skinny figure that was walking over. An outsider was actually able to raise his cultivation and alchemy skills to such an extent. From this one could see just how strong he was. Compared to these flowers that were being nurtured in a greenhouse within the Xiao clan, Xiao Yan's strength was absolute. Chapter 1438. On the arena, Xiao Yan slowly walked to the center of the arena. When he felt the two gazes that were directed at him, he shook his head gently to get rid of the tiredness in his mind. He then cupped his fist towards the two and said, Xiao Yan, Xiao Lei, Xiao Zhuobin. Xiao Lei, who was wearing a purple robe, took a step forward and cupped his fist in response. Xiao Zhuobin, who was wearing a green robe, raised his chin and followed with a smile. On the elders' seats, Xiao Dingtian slowly stood up from his seat when he saw that Xiao Yan had finally entered the arena. At the same time, the remaining clan elders on both sides also followed suit and stood up. Their gazes immediately landed on Xiao Yan's 3-man group below. This was especially the case when they looked at Xiao Lei and Xiao Yan. Admiration that could not be hidden surged out from their turbid old eyes. Everyone present was naturally familiar with Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin. The two of them were the grandsons of Xiao Gan and Xiao Dingtian, respectively. They also had quite a bit of prestige in the Xiao clan. Especially after returning from their training, their cultivation had increased by quite a bit. After this, the clan would definitely entrust them with important tasks. Their futures could be said to be bright. Forget about Xiao Yan's status within the Xiao clan in the future. Whether he would be able to stay in the clan was another matter altogether. Xiao Yan, since you have left your soul imprint on the broad boundary tablet today, no one can change the result of this battle. If you can win against Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin, you can participate in the clan gathering. Otherwise, if I lose, I will leave on my own and never come back. Before Xiao Dingtian's voice from the elder seat sounded, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded and interrupted him. At this moment, Xiao Yan had also slowly turned his head. His gaze stared at the old man seated at the top of the seats. The expression in his eyes was indifferent. Haha, you have some courage. At this moment, a short and fat old man slowly walked over from beside Xiao Dingtian. His gaze similarly paused on Xiao Yan. After which, he exchanged glances with Xiao Zhuobin and smiled in return. Only then did he look at the person in front of him. Humph, it's just a battle of words. In front of absolute strength, he has no chance of winning. Xiao Dingtian stared at Xiao Yan and spoke coldly. Old fellow, you're even more stubborn than me. It's only a junior, so why do you have to lower yourself to go against him? After all, those words of yours are only guesses. Isn't it a bit too heartless to chase them out of the clan before it's verified? Xiao Gan looked down at Xiao Yan and said in an indifferent voice. Heh, it's this old man's fault. Didn't you also violate this kid's taboo when you took the sumaru grass that day? I'm afraid he won't let it go. Xiao Dingtian smiled mockingly. The latter couldn't help but curl his lips. After all, Xiao Dingtian was in charge of everything in the clan. He could even capture some of Xiao Dingtian's movements in such detail. Then, he explained, among the juniors of the clan, only Tianer's cultivation is the weakest. Although it has something to do with age, it's not a solution for him to remain at the peak of the Origin Emperor realm. He had no choice but to take the sumaru grass. Moreover, this old man has already given Xiao Xian a chance. If he really attacked, I wouldn't be able to stop him with just 30% of his strength. Don't you feel that Xiao Xian is a bit strange? Hearing this, Xiao Dingtian was slightly surprised. He quickly recalled what had happened recently, especially what had happened to Xiao Xian. He couldn't help but voice his doubts. You're talking about his cultivation? Xiao Gan raised his eyebrows. The latter immediately nodded and said, That's right. He comprehended two great Dao powers at the same time. With such powerful battle prowess, his cultivation actually stopped at the peak of the Origin Emperor realm. Even if he really has a wasted bloodline, it shouldn't be like this. Could it be because of the cultivation technique? After pondering for a moment, Xiao Gan spoke with a doubtful expression. However, he immediately shook his head, unable to come to a conclusion. The returnance art is the most profound cultivation technique in the world. However, once the 3 volumes of the cultivation technique are gathered in one's body, one's cultivation will never encounter a bottleneck before the Origin Saint realm. However, Xiao Xian's situation doesn't seem to be caused by cultivating the returnance art. As if he understood Xiao Gan's thoughts, Xiao Dingtian slowly shook his head and sighed softly. Then, his gaze fell again and looked at the arena. Although there were quite a lot of words between the two old men, on the whole, it was merely a passing thought. At this moment in the arena, Xiao Yan had once again withdrawn his gaze. After a simple courteous introduction between the three of them, they were finally about to welcome the fight that everyone was looking forward to. Haha, since you've come to the Xiao clan, this is your home. You don't have to leave. Brother Xiao Yan, you don't have to worry about that old man's crazy words. Xiao Lei frowned and glanced at the two old men on the arena. The two of them shrugged their shoulders and curled their lips with a strange expression. Then, they laughed mischievously at Xiao Yan. Hearing this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but feel stunned. His emotions were also slightly stirred. Compared to the other members of the Xiao clan, the two young men in front of him gave him a feeling of kinship. At the very least, their eyes were much more direct when they looked at him. They were unlike the other members of the Xiao clan, who were filled with hesitation and hesitation. Haha, how about this? Between the two of us, I'm the older one. Therefore, Zhuobin will accompany you in the first battle. Otherwise, the two old men will make things difficult for you. Xiao Lei patted Xiao Zhuobin's shoulder and smiled at Xiao Yan. Hearing this, Xiao Zhuobin immediately nodded. Then he smiled at Xiao Yan and said, That's good. That's fine as well. I was just curious as well. As an alchemist, to what extent can your combat strength reach? Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily felt a little moved when he saw the sincere smiles that were revealed on the faces of the two of them. Only people who revealed their true feelings in this manner could be considered true blood relatives. Xiao Lei's arrangement had, to a great extent, helped Xiao Yan avoid some trouble. After all, it was still considered normal if he could defeat Xiao Lei and Xiao Yan by taking turns to fight. However, if he could even win against two opponents by himself, forget about those elders on the stage, it was likely that even the audience present would not be able to accept it. However, Xiao Yan only smiled at Xiao Lei and Xiao Zhuobin's words. He slowly walked forward and cupped his hands gratefully at the two of them. He smiled and said, Xiao Yan appreciates your kind intentions. However, this battle isn't just for these people to watch. I want the elders on the arena to understand that I, Xiao Yan, have the qualifications to participate in the clan meeting and also have the qualifications to stay in the Xiao clan. As soon as these words came out, the expressions on the faces of the two people in front of him suddenly froze. Then, they looked at each other and could not help but reveal a hint of shame in their eyes. From their point of view, since Xiao Yan had joined the Xiao clan, it meant that they had a brotherly relationship with him. This was why they wanted to lend him a hand. However, they had forgotten that other than being from the same clan, they were also opponents in this fighting arena. Facing an opponent head-on was the greatest respect they could give him. Therefore, the two of you, please come at me together.